Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight is a regular meeting of the South Kingstown Planning Board. The date is Tuesday, December 13, 2022. The time is 7:01. The first item on our agenda is roll call. Joe Murphy is absent. Susan Axelrod.
Here.
Paul Jordan.
Here.
Robin Pothier.
Here.
Peter DiStefano. Here. Elizabeth Karp.
Here.
And Maria Mack is here. Our next agenda item is the consent agenda. This includes approval of minutes from November 10, 2022 regular session and work session, November 2022 regular session, and the report of the administrative officer. If there are no additions or comments relative to any consent agenda items, would someone like to make a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Susan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Liz. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I would like to let folks who've come out here tonight know that item number 4, which is a public hearing advisory development plan review for Silver Spring Marina, has asked to be continued to our meeting of January 24, 2023. So if anyone is here for that item, it will not be heard this evening. And since we're discussing that now, if the board doesn't mind making a motion to continue that item. We have a motion from Peter. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Paul. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Back to our agenda. Item D, subdivision and land development projects, request for extension of conceptual master plan approval, major multi-household land development project, 571 Main Street. Request to extend conceptual master plan approval for a 36-unit residential development and associated site improvements originally approved on November 13, 2014, typo there, located at 571 Main Street, Roland Fiore, applicant owner. Is there anyone representing the applicant?
Madam Chair, we were made aware that they will not have legal counsel here this evening. You do have a staff memo from the department as well as a proposed draft motion. With regards to the motion, we do have legal counsel Amy Goins here tonight, who would like to just walk you through how the project was approved, what the status of the project is, and the relationship of the proposed motion. It's a little bit different than your norm.
Yes, that would be helpful because we were actually not made aware of this particular situation prior to this.
So this is a development that came before the board in 2014 and was denied by the board. The board denied master plan approval.
Yes.
Thank you. And then the applicant appealed that decision, first to the zoning board, which upheld the denial, and then to the Superior Court. And separately, the applicant filed a lawsuit against the town seeking damages for alleged diminution of value to the property based on some alleged water flowing onto the property from public rights-of-way. Those lawsuits were eventually discussed and settled by the council in executive session back in 2020. And essentially, the settlement was in exchange for Mr. Fiore dropping his lawsuit against the town seeking money damages, the council granted him the master plan approval that he had been looking for. So the effective date of that master plan was December 1st, 2020. So it had the initial 2-year vesting period called for under state law. This is the first request for a 1-year extension, which is essentially by right under state law. It's really just they have to make a written request and they get a 1-year extension. They're entitled to another 1-year extension if they request it. After those 2 1-year extensions, further extensions of the master plan approval would have to be for good cause. So it's coming to the planning board differently than a normal development plan would, but the extension request is the same as a normal extension request. It's really a by right request. There's no finding required under state law.
And with any of those potential subsequent extensions, would any changes in our regulations be required to be upheld going forward?
No, the master plan, it's vested according to the zoning ordinance and regulations at the time of approval. It's not like reinstatement where the board has to find that there were no substantial changes in the regulations. Extension of the approved master plan vests it to proceed according to the regs in place on December 1st, 2020.
And would there be any, since this was a denial, would there be any potential for conditions of approval that may not have been part of the decision based on the fact that it was a denial as opposed to an approval?
Not with the master plan. The only conditions that were placed on the master plan when the council approved the settlement were the development proposal is limited to 36 dwelling units. It must provide a minimum 100-foot front setback, a 25-foot side setback, and a fee in lieu of the required LMI housing unit. So in terms of conditions, those are the only conditions on the master plan approval. When and if it comes before the board for the preliminary plan stage, that's the stage at which the board could impose reasonable conditions based on what the engineering shows.
And this is when we had the fee in lieu of provision in our regulations, which we
Correct.
now do not. Questions, comments from board members? Robin?
Excuse me. I would find it difficult to approve something that this board had denied. Nothing has changed since this board denied it, so why would we now approve it? I don't...
Because state law provides that, well, number one, the council approved it. So the council approved it by virtue of their power to settle this as a lawsuit, right? It was not only the appeal of the denial, it was in conjunction with the other lawsuit. So the council has approved the development plan. And under state law, again, there's no real weighing or balancing or findings that the board has to make. State law provides that the approved master plan, which this is, it wasn't approved by the board, but it was approved by the council, is vested for a 2-year period with the right to extend for 2 one-year extensions upon written request by the applicant. Thereafter, vesting may be extended for good cause shown. So after that initial 2 years plus 2 years, if an applicant wants to have a plan, the expiration date extended, then they have to show good cause. Why should it be extended past that time? And the board has to find that good cause. But there's really no basis for denial under the statute. In other words, when the statute says upon written request and doesn't prescribe any findings by the board, I would consider it an abuse of discretion for the board to deny that. Or I don't think abuse of discretion is the right term, actually. I don't think the board has discretion to deny it.
I don't think the board has anything to support approving it either. They didn't approve it at the time. Nothing has changed.
No, so you're not approving the development plan, you're approving an extension of the expiration date for the approval.
So the approval was done by another authoritative body.
I understand, the town council, and
Yeah.
maybe they should do the extension then. The board didn't
Well-
approve of it in the first place. What is,
The
why would we
settlement
think differently?
Yeah, the settlement provides that basically the settlement vests the applicant with a master plan that has to proceed under the law like any other master plan would. That means, right, the next stage is preliminary. They're not ready to proceed to the preliminary plan stage. So under state law, the planning board, not the council, it's in your lap now, and you have to evaluate it according to the statute.
And so it will come back to us should they decide to proceed for the preliminary review.
Why ask us?
I'm ready to
Process.
make the motion if,
We have a motion from Paul,
Would you like me to read it?
yes, and a second from Peter.
Subject to the terms of a settlement agreement approved by the South Kingstown Town Council on November 9th, 2020, granting conceptual master plan approval for the major household land development project located at 571 High Street, identified as AP 56-3, lot, 571, that should say 571 Main Street, shouldn't it? Yes. Okay, as amended, 571 Main Street, identified as AP 56-3, lot 137, copy attached. The South Kingstown Planning Board hereby grants an extension of said conceptual master plan approval for 1 year or until December 1st, 2023.
Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes. 1 nay, motion carries. Next agenda item is a public hearing, major subdivision, flexible design residential project, preliminary plan, Northwood subdivision. Is there anyone representing the applicant?
Good evening, Chair Mack, members of the board. Good to see you again. James Callahan, Callahan and Callahan, 3 Brown Street in Whitford. Here tonight again with Earl Greco and Michael O'Brien of Northwoods LLC. Again, their project is located in the corner of Curtis Corner and South Road. I tried to count back. I think this is the 7th time we appeared before you since June of 2020. Not all for the preliminary plan, but I think we have some good supplemental information for you tonight, and we have information on the DM approval of the shift of the walking path to the north of the forested wetland on the southern border of the lot, and also more information from Kurt Van Dexter on the landscape management plan. And again, Earl and Michael are here to fill in any blanks. Each time we've met with you, we think we've learned a little bit more about the project and how to make an improvement, and how hopefully we'll make a great final product in the end. I think Earl and Michael have taken great pains and great caution and listened intently to every suggestion you've made and made appropriate measures to improve the project. We hope the board appreciates that effort, and we hope that tonight we move toward a closing of the public hearing and hopefully a positive decision. So with that, I'd like to ask David Manoni to please come up.
Hello, I'm David Manoni of Groundbreaking Designs. So first, I'd like to touch base on the DEM permit modification relating to the proposed walking path. As requested, we have relocated the portion of the path that used to be proposed near the property line of Mr. Stephen Hunter, and we have relocated the path north of the forested wetland area.
We have DM approval for that permit, correct?
Yes, we do.
And I believe, I'm not sure if you know this, but the permit was recorded in the land evidence records today at Town Hall.
I was not aware.
I think Michael or Earl can testify to that if needed, but it has been recorded as of October 24th. The permit from DM was recorded in the land evidence records.
And for the benefit of the folks here this evening, could you show us the modification on the map?
It was submitted electronically and as hard copies, so
I couldn't really see how it was changed. You encircled the area that was to be changed.
right.
It doesn't really show where it goes.
Do you have that to be pulled up on the screen? Okay.
You didn't bring copies?
I have one right here. We submitted 10 copies of this.
I believe the board should have copies. Correct.
Okay. So if you look at the plan, the dark area, the dark lines are the new proposed path, whereas there is a very light gray area showing where the existing, or the earlier proposed path was located. So as you can see, we have relocated the path such that it goes by the cemetery, highlighting one of the cultural resources on the site as suggested and promoted through the RDFP regs, and around the northern area of the forested wetland. And we have obtained the DEM permit necessary for this path.
Thank you.
And I'd like to add a few more comments based on the path as well. Within the town subdivision regulations, Article 4 for RDFP projects, number 12.b.3, it is stated that open space shall be suitable for active or passive recreational uses. Point number 6, open space shall provide for pedestrian pathways for use by the residents of the development. So that is within the town subdivision regulations as under RDFP projects. The next point I'd like to touch base on is I've had conversations with the town engineer, Mr. Mark Conboy, and he had a few insignificant minor comments relating to the utilities and the stormwater structures on the site. And we had a conversation over the phone, and I had a conversation with the owners and applicants, and we have agreed to address all the town's comments such that the town would be okay with what we propose. And we would request that preliminary plan approval be granted contingent upon us addressing Mr. Conboy's comments. And we have no issues with any of his comments. The next issue, well, first of all, did the planning board get those comments? Are you aware of them? Would you like me to go into detail about those comments at all? Okay. So basically, Mr. Conboy has asked that the proposed water main be slightly maneuvered such that it does not cross through the middle of the road. So what we would do is we would add some bends to the water line to keep it on the southern and western portions of the roadway. Additionally, we will move the proposed communications and underground electric lines out of the proposed swale that is adjacent to Lot 4. So that area of the communications and underground electric will be under the edge of the pavement there. Also, we will be making sure that the proposed hydrant located north of the pavement at the entrance of the roadway will be outside of the proposed swale. Another comment Mr. Conboy had was he wanted further specification and detail of the proposed swale that runs along the road adjacent to Lot 4 and Lot 3, so we will provide that on the plans. Mr. Conboy also was interested in additional detail and specification regarding the operation and maintenance of the BMPs, the stormwater BMPs. So we will provide an individual checklist for each specific BMP to Mr. Conboy's liking. So that's generally what he requested, and we are willing to provide that information. Is there any questions specific to that? I can move on.
Questions on engineering specifics? No. Please continue.
Okay. It was brought to my attention that the owner of a parcel, Plat 47, Lot 39, was concerned with the existing well of that property and the groundwater, the quality of the groundwater for the well. So the property is located southwest of our proposed project. And
excuse me, is this the letter that we received this evening from Jeff Clark of 715 Curtis Corner Road?
yes, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this project has obtained all necessary DEM subdivision suitability permits relating to the siting of our on-site wastewater treatment systems and any wells that we've proposed and any earthwork proposed, anything that could potentially cause contamination of groundwater. We've received the permits for them. And just to add to that, a little specifics, DEM allows for a density of 345 gallons per day per 20,000 square feet. So relating to septic, or on-site wastewater treatment systems, our proposed development's density is less than half of that. Also, DEM requires 100-foot separation from wells to on-site wastewater treatment systems, and approximately our closest OWTS on-site wastewater treatment system is approximately 400 to 500 feet away from that property, Plat 47, Lot 39. So it should not be a concern of groundwater contamination due to our proposed project.
Could I ask a question?
Of course.
Does that 100 feet, I think you said, does that take into account the inclination of the land, the terrain, or is that?
You mean like slope distance? No, it's not through slope distance, but even slope distance, it wouldn't make it would be a very minor difference in distance horizontally and slope distance on this site.
Or for septic, but let's say surface fertilizer.
Stormwater you're talking about?
Stormwater, right, that's gonna,
Well, we have provided the BMPs that provide the necessary water quality volume treatment for stormwater. So regards to stormwater, we have received our DEM insignificant alteration permit, which addresses stormwater runoff to meet the water quality standards as set forth by the state.
next to a well.
We are not next to a well. We're far away from the well. But the project proposes stormwater treatment that meets the state's regulations.
Right. But that doesn't take into consideration the vicinity of a well?
Well, I guess it would, but we're much farther than anything that DEM would consider dangerous for a well in relation to stormwater. So DEM requires 50 feet separation, for example, for infiltration practices. Our closest is 400, 500 feet.
Other questions, comments at this point? Please continue.
Okay. I guess the last thing I'd like to say is I'd like to thank the town planning department and the planning board for directing this project into the RDFP development. As a citizen of this town, it's something I'd like to see more of. So I thank you for your time and your efforts, and I'm glad we're in the position we're in right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'd like to have Kurt Van Dexter come up and say a few words.
My name is Kurt Van Dexter, registered landscape architect here in Rhode Island.
And Kurt, can you explain to the board what you've come up with in terms of a HOA landscape management plan going forward?
Well, we're going to have, let me get my, we are going to be developing a management plan through the homeowners association, which will there we are, which will break down the whole site into various areas, separate from northern buffer, south road buffer, et cetera, to the perimeter buffer areas, conservation and protection, the Holly Oak Lot Cemetery, conservation and protection, community garden area, conservation and protection, walking area the same, entry area the same, followed by a compendium of trees and shrub species that are found on the Northwoods subdivision within that. Each one of those 6 will be broken down and defined specifically with what the needs are to help ensure the quality of the site for those who live on the site, for the neighbors and those who frequent the area, as well as a plant community itself.
Anything else you'd like to add, Kurt, at this time?
With that, not in particular.
Any questions from the board regarding the landscape management plan or the landscape plan in general?
Well, I have a question that I think I would like staff to address. I know that there's been conversations between staff and applicant relative to the fact that there will be trees internal to the site that may not survive in terms of the grading and clearing, and staff has added some language in the motion to address that. So if we could talk about that first, Jamie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jamie Rabbit, Planning Director. With regards to a couple of items associated with landscaping, both internal to the lots and buffering, in staff's recommendation, we have condition number 18. This deals with internal landscaping and tree protection. The applicant's site plan identify a number of trees that they intend to save throughout the development of this project. However, there are a number of trees that are potentially in conflict with utility trenches, grading, and other development associated with the project. So it was staff's recommendation that any tree that is identified clearly on the approved landscaping plan/site plans that is intended to be saved, that for some reason during construction, either the health, integrity, or actual tree is damaged, affecting the longevity of that tree, that tree is removed and replaced at a 2-to-1 ratio in consultation with the administrative officer. And those trees, the replacement trees, should be a minimum of 2.5-inch caliber diameter breast height, which is typically a 3 to 3.5-inch caliber tree measured at the root ball or nursery stock.
2-to-1 or 3-to-1?
2-to-1. There's a typo in the draft that you have that says 3-to-1. Staff's making a recommendation of 2-to-1. In addition, condition number 16, there was a significant amount of discussion on the waiver request for the easterly buffer with South Road and the northerly buffer with South Road. All of the site development plans that you've seen show a hypothetical development where the potential for a house may be and shows site suitability. On the screen, the 3 lots proposed on South Road are proposed locations of homes. They are not tied to the final location of those homes as detailed on this plan. The 3 lots on the northern buffer also are proposed locations for homes. Those homes may be adjusted. They're just rectangular boxes. They may take different shapes and forms. The landscape architect has done a good job trying to buffer the existing locations of the proposed houses. But those houses may move. The delineation of a specific line which shows vegetation, once the house lots are actually developed and vegetation is removed, you may find an area where the lot was cleared to the property line. And if there was a tree on the property line that's cut down, there may not be another piece of vegetation for 10, 15, 5 feet internal to the buffer. So it's staff recommendation that when a building permit is pulled, that the applicant submit a specific landscape plan and surety in the amount of $2,000 for supplemental landscaping specific to the development of the lot. These houses probably will not be perfect rectangles. They may not end up in the exact location that's shown on these plans. And you can supplement the landscaping plan with additional buffering. And that buffering should be submitted in a plan by the applicant. Or again, it could be a completely different property owner who hired a different builder, who has a different landscape architect. But a plan should be submitted to the AO. The AO would review it in consultation with existing staff and the landowner, as well as potentially the chairman of the planning board. approve a supplemental buffer plan that would be installed, and surety would be released upon issuance of a certificate of occupancy. I think this alleviates a lengthy discussion that could go on for months about how much landscaping is appropriate, where it is appropriate, within the buffer or just outside of the buffer. You're reviewing a hypothetical plan that may differ when it's actually constructed. This gives you the ability to adjust the requirement of landscaping in the field at the time and essence of construction. This, I believe, supports the waiver request for a reduction of the buffer on South Road and eliminates any long-term issues about buffering needs on the northern portion of the property. So again, staff is making recommendations for lots 1, 2, 3, which are the easterly lots, 10, 11, and 12, which are the northerly lots. And the amount of $2,000, again, done at building permit application, solidified prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. I think what you've done, Peter, in the past is you've gone through extreme efforts to identify every location of every tree and every new location of landscaping to be supplemented and putting it there so it screens the house shown on these plans, and then the house moves 30 feet. And the buffer that you planted is in the wrong spot. And I think this is a compromise between asking the developer to go back and reevaluate the landscaping buffer, to go back and reevaluate the possibility that a house is moved left or right, and then adjust the landscaping 4 more times, reviewed 4 more times, versus just making a recommendation that you supplement the landscaping when you have an actual location of a house. No. What you've done in the past is required developers to revise their development plans to screen the possible location of a house along the entire perimeter of the property. So again, I think this is a compromise. You know, if you look at lot, I believe it's lot 1 without looking at the plans. Lot 1 is the first lot as you enter the proposed cul-de-sac on the right-hand side. That house may be located further south or further north, so it may slide to the bottom or the top. The landscaping buffer that's proposed by the landscape architect right now is for that house in its present location. I don't know if it's 2.5 stories or 3.5 stories. I don't know if it's a garrison or a ranch. This gives the ability to not go back to developers and say, plan for everything as if it's a 35-foot tall, complete 4,000 square foot footprint, taking up every square inch of the property, and develop a plan for that when it may be too much for what's actually required based on the final development of the property. It's not what you've done in the past, but I think it solidifies the developer's ability to adjust without throwing another $100,000 at landscaping for something you don't know what it finally looks like.
So it creates flexibility. It also helps to justify the waiver that's been requested for the 100-foot buffer that's normally required along South Road. Because this is an unusual property in that they have a large forested area that has significant challenges due to the location and the health of the trees contained therein.
And to your point, Peter, if the first house lot is a ranch, your landscaping provisions associated with that ranch may be different than if it's a 2-story garrison.
And just for some clarity, we have no objection to that condition on 1, 2, and 3. No issue with that. We do have an issue with it on 10, 11, and 12, which is the northern buffer, because we're already planting 31 additional plantings in addition to keeping the current buffer, and making it larger than required by regulation. So 1, 2, and 3, we have no issue with. We just prefer it not to be on 10, 11, and 12 because we've beaten that many, many times over.
Are you talking about condition numbers or lot numbers?
Jamie, could I ask a couple of questions? Okay, is it $2,000 per lot or $2,000 for the buffer?
$2,000 per lot, and it's not required until they pull a building permit for that property. It's
Okay.
$12,000 in total.
And so when it refers to the property owner,
If they went back to the original landscape plan they showed you a month ago, there was 3 to 4 times as much landscaping in that northern buffer.
It's been greatly reduced.
So, and again, I applaud the landscape architect's attempts to try and adjust to what's in the field based on what's being proposed for housing footprints today. This gives you the ability and the developer to be flexible without going back to a much larger plan that may not serve the actual purposes intended for. So, sorry.
It is a different plan.
so when it refers to the 2,000, the property owner shall submit. Now, that's the developer, not the owners of the new properties.
So, and again, it's intended to be whoever owns the property at the time of the building permit. So the applicant may not be the developer. Let me back up. It's my understanding that it is the intent of this applicant to be the developer of each home on this property. There's nothing in the regulations that prevent him or them from selling a lot to Susan Axelrod, who could construct her own home there. If it was sold to Susan Axelrod, when Susan Axelrod went to pull a building permit, she would also have to post or provide a landscape plan and a $2,000 surety. The landscaping would go in during construction. It would be inspected prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, and then released at the end. We have written correspondence from the applicant who was willing to do $2,500 on lots 1, 2, and 3, but not do 10, 11, and 12. So they were willing to do $4,500 on 2 lots. Again, to me, we're chasing, again, it's not my financial resources, but you're chasing pennies at this point in time versus finding a compromise and a plan to move forward.
Other questions or comments relative to landscaping and the buffer? I have some, but they're really related to when we get to the motion, so I'll save those for that point. You have further witnesses?
We do not.
Thank you. So the board appreciates the fact that this applicant went the FDRP route, Flexible Design Residential Project, and if board members have a look at, on the staff comments, pages 2, pages 3, pages 4, pages 5, it lists specific criteria associated and benefits associated with this type of development. Some of the things that I think are very important are promoting high quality and appropriate design and construction of land developments and subdivisions, promoting the protection of the existing natural and built environment and the mitigation of all significant negative impacts of any proposed development on the existing environment, promoting design of land developments and subdivisions which are well integrated with the surrounding neighborhoods with regard to natural and built features, and which concentrate development in areas which can best support intensive use by reason of natural characteristics and existing infrastructure, encouraging local design and improvement standards to reflect the intent of the community comprehensive plans with regard to the physical character of the various neighborhoods and districts of the municipality, and encouraging the establishment and consistent application of procedures for local record-keeping on all matters of land development and subdivision review, approval, and construction. If the board has no other questions, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? We do receive a letter that was referenced by the applicant dated December 12th from Jeff Clark regarding his dug well. So is there anyone who wishes to speak? If so, please come up and state your name for the record.
Stephen Hunter from 685A Curtis Corner Road. Board knows that I originally had my objection to the construction of the walking trail as a whole, based upon the representations of Mr. Greco that he did obtain DEM approval to reset the the walking trail. I would withdraw my objection to that with the proviso that, that they also follow through on their original offer, not only to get DEM approval to resituate the walking trail, but also to plant the 5 white pines in the buffer zone directly behind my home, as was originally promised. I don't know if that's still in the offering, but seeing that there's plenty of plantings going on the northern boundary from Mr. Handrigan, I would respectfully request the same be done in the buffer zone behind my property to alleviate the privacy concerns that I have. That's it. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Chair Mack, just so to answer Mr. Hunter's request, the applicant will do that and plant those 5 trees in that zone.
Very good, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Good evening. I'm John Underhill, an abutting property owner at 87 Henry Case Way. Thank you, Chairperson Mack and members of the Planning Board and the town staff for your service to our town regarding this proposal. I almost feel like I should be apologizing for you for taking your time to listen to my concerns again, as this is probably the 4th or 5th time that I've come before the board. But I'm really kind of passionate about this project, this subject, and have some serious reservations regarding it, and also the particular future development of our beautiful town. I appreciate the changes that the board has recommended, and for all the things that the developers have done in making these adjustments. The property is much improved over what it was initially proposed, but it's still not there yet. The initial plan was to reduce the buffer along South Road from the required 100 feet, as stipulated in the comprehensive plan, to just 25 feet. The board granted conditional approval to reduce it to 75 feet, with the understanding that it could be looked at again in the future. I think this is an ideal time to revisit that decision. When the town's comprehensive plan was approved, 100 feet was considered to be the bare minimum for adequate buffering along a heavily traveled road such as South Road. For it to be reduced, an applicant would need to prove a hardship, which I don't believe has been demonstrated. The land could still be developed, but with maybe just not as many homes. The developer, the builder who did our homes, put in 6 homes on 32 acres. Down the street in Stone Soup Farm, there are 24 homes on 90 acres. I don't see why it's necessary to fit in 16 residences on 21 acres. It's still possible for the developer to be profitable and still maintain the parameters of the town comprehensive plan. I think a second concern that we have as abutters is who will enforce the restrictions on the future homeowners and contractors once approval is granted for development. I believe these gentlemen have the best of intentions when agreeing to certain restrictions. However, as has been observed with the corner lot that has the original home located on it, which was sold off by these developers to another entity, that parcel has become run down. A portion of the beautiful stone wall along South Road has been torn down. think thankfully, since I spoke at our last month's meetings, I have not seen the big red school bus parked on the side of South Road anymore at that location. I don't blame these developers for what has happened there. But as neighbors, our worst fears have come to fruition. It's conceivable that future owners might also allow the same to happen in the development. If the buffer is reduced to 75 feet, I think it's human nature to push the envelope and see what you can get away with, perhaps going to 50 feet or even less. I liken it to speeding laws. I don't think anyone drives 25 miles per hour down South Road, and I'm not even sure it's enforced until someone goes above 35 to 40 miles per hour. So I think it's best to maintain the existing standards in our town's comprehensive plans. The length of an average person's step is 2.5 feet, so 25 feet is only 10 steps. And speaking of traffic and speeding, that leads me to my final concern about this new development with the 16 homes. I think there's obviously going to be a desire for the residents to avail themselves of the beautiful bike path that's just to the north. I use it every day. However, for the road to get to the bike path, for individuals to walk or bike across that road, it's really not safe. The sidewalk that allows people to get to the bike path from the developments from the north, such as Teft Hill, Parter Woods, Kingston Woods, have a sidewalk on the western border of South Road, but it stops at the bike path. I'm not sure if the town put that sidewalk in or if it was a requirement when the Teft Hill and the other developments went in. But the road in front of our development, in front of the big field, has a dangerous curve. It has been proven, as has been proven by the cars that have hit that stone wall several times over the last few years. I think it would be sad if an accident or personal injury occurred due to the increase in pedestrian activity from this new development to the bike path. I even know that the new homes that are being developed on Curtis Corner Road near the police station have a sidewalk that allows the residents to get to the recreational areas along Curtis Corner School. Thank you again for listening to our concerns, and I appreciate all the time that you take to ensure that our South Kingstown remains a wonderful place to live and raise a family.
Thank you.
Hello, Dave Manoni again. I'd just like to bring up one comment in response to the questions and comments that were just raised. If the plan set could be brought up, sheet E2 of E7, please. If you can zoom in on the entrance of the roadway where it curves. Now, my point is this, the reason why the buffer, one of the reasons why the buffer was requested to be reduced was to allow for adequate and lesser cut and fill for the proposed roadway. As you can see, as the roadway enters westward into the property, it turns north prior to the hill that is just west of it. So if you look at the contours, there's a ridge that runs southward, just west of where our road is now. If the road were to move further west, then that turn be pushed further west, it would require much more earth disturbance, land disturbance, cut and fill. So this roadway layout is by far a more environmentally friendly layout. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, April Ewing. I'm the abutter that lives at 761B Curtis Corner Road. And I'd like to thank the board for taking the time to listen to us tonight. At last month's meeting, I did ask a couple of questions. I was hoping that sometime since that meeting that someone with Mr. Greco's association would have reached out to me to address those issues. I have not heard from anyone, so I'll ask the questions again in the hopes of getting answers. On the landscaping plan is a wilderness viewing area. I asked for what the dimensions of that area are because I've heard that the path is 4 feet, but on the plan, the wilderness viewing area looks considerably wider. So I'd like to know what the dimensions of that area are, as well as can anything be built or placed on that area? Because currently that area is located behind my backyard. I also asked the question, what, if any, vegetation will be cleared between the 2 existing stone walls, the one that is my property boundary, and then there is a vegetative buffer before the second stone wall where the walking trail would come up to. I'd like to know if there's anything that's intended to be cleared in that area. Since we did not hear from anyone regarding these areas, my husband and I did take the map with us and make an attempt to locate the landmarks so that we could see where the walking path would be. And it was mentioned by someone, I don't remember who, at the last meeting when we did address our concerns about the walking path, that there was a possibility that maybe it could be shortened, thereby ending it so that the viewing area was more in alignment with the current, if the plan is up, you'll see they have an access road that aligns more with where the property boundaries are. And it was proposed that possibility the walking path could be shortened and the viewing area could be placed kind of at the end of that access road, which would still allow the developers to have the loop trail that they're hoping for, but it would prevent it from being aligned directly with our backyard, because then it would fall between the houses. So we did walk that, and if the builders are amenable to it, that would be something, while we would prefer no walking path, we would much prefer, if the walking path is going to exist, that it stop at that point and that the wilderness viewing area be pushed up to align with that access road. That it allows for greater privacy for everyone involved, and it still gives them their circular walking path. And the other question that I had is, I believe there are proposed dry wells that sort of run between the neighborhood and the walking path. Right now, where the viewing area is located, it does indicate sort of a jut out to cut out that vegetation. If we were able to shorten the path and align it more with the access road, would we be able to preserve that vegetation, thereby giving us a greater sort of vegetative buffer between the dry wells and our backyard? So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can staff ask a quick question?
Certainly.
Ryan, can you just put the GIS map back up? For the lady who just spoke, which lot were you again? 76B? Brian, could you blow that up, please? 76-1B, correct.
So the current proposal has
You need to speak into the mic, and please restate your name for the record. Thank you.
April Ewing. So according to the current plan that's proposed, the viewing area would fall literally directly behind our backyard.
Okay.
And I know that somebody commented that it is like 360 feet, which is the length of a football field, but I would beg to say that anybody who's been to a football game knows that you can see from end to end of the field. So
Just for
all we're asking is that possibly it be shortened so that it aligns more with the property boundary, so that it doesn't end up directly behind the backyard.
So lot 76-1B, you cleared all the way to the rear of your property line?
We did not, it was that way when we purchased it, but there is actually, you can see there's a vegetative buffer, about 25 feet or so, that is left to go wild.
Both to the north and south of your property is completely forested?
Yes.
Thank you.
You can see that there's a small bit of grass in the front, then there is a natural area before and a little bit is cleared for the front yard, and then you can see what's cleared of the back, and then that is maintained as a naturalized area.
But is there any understory? I just see some perhaps deciduous
Oh,
trees.
We're working on it. When we bought the house 3 years ago, this is what we inherited, and we are working to put in some understory trees.
Thank you.
Currently, there are many mature trees on it.
Thank you very much.
Hello, David Manoni, Groundbreaking Designs. In response to those comments, we do not want to move the path at all. We empathize with the owner of that property, but we believe that we have addressed as many concerns as we need to address, and that the path is adequately spaced away from the property lines. I believe she mentioned it was 300-plus feet. It is an area that the owners have picked out due to the cultural resource of it being between the two wetland areas and providing potential for bird viewing. And then I'd just like to point out again that this path and this project is in alignment with the RDFP regs. And the regs state that paths in open space shall be allowed for the public to use, the owners of these properties.
Go ahead.
So could you clarify whether or not you're planning to build any structures at that clearing, at the termination of the walking path, or whether or not there would be any prohibition from a homeowners association building something in that space?
There'll be minimal monumentation to allow the walkers to know where the path ends and begins. There'll be no construction at the end of the path, maybe a stone to sit on, but that's about it.
I have a question, and I think that question of activities, and it's meant to be a passive use, viewing area, somebody's out for a walk. I think the question is, could this become a location for a fire pit, for community gatherings, for a barbecue?
No.
And is there anything to prevent that sort of activity 5-10 years down the road? Could there be something in the HOA that says, this is what it's intended for, it is not a fire pit or barbecue?
If the path, David Maloney, if the path wasn't even there, there would be nothing to prevent that anyway, right? People are allowed to freely roam whether there's a path there or not, so.
They are currently, that's what I'm asking, is
Right.
if we can prevent that.
Guess not.
We can put in rules in the HOA bylaws to prevent that, but certainly that is not something
Right.
that we would encourage for the homeowners.
Right.
And the people who are going to buy these lots are not going to want that in their back viewing areas, and Ms. Clark certainly doesn't want that either, so.
I think if we could just put that idea out there, or put it in the HOA, that this is not what this area is for. Obviously, people may do it, and it becomes an enforcement issue that I don't even want to think about, but
Yes.
just so that it's sort of in writing somewhere.
Yes, and another question relative to the path is that, granted, a path is different than a road, but when you're designing a roadway, there is often a clear zone on either side of, depending on the width of the road, several feet. When this path is developed, how will you minimize that so you don't have that clear zone? Can that be done? State your name for the record, please. We
Excuse
know
me.
who you are, but.
Michael O'Brien, one of the applicants. The intent from an earlier iteration on the narrative was always to be passive. This is a quiet place. This is not there's going to be no softball there, or we're not going to put up a basketball hoop. There will be no structures there other than maybe a bench where people could, take pause. But it's always meant for a quiet space. So in terms of monumentation, we're clearly stated that we want a 4-foot wide path, and it will have a termination point. I would imagine that area might grow to 10 feet in a circular area. But that's it, not to disturb nature, but to enjoy it passively.
And you will make provisions when that path is installed that you don't clear, say, 10 feet on either side of it and disturb the existing vegetation?
On one side of it, we have a significant drainage apparatus, and we will have to clear for that. But other than that, the intent is not to disturb unneeded areas.
Thank you. I would be in favor of some sort of homeowner agreement that there not be fire pits there, because I think the threat of forest fire is a genuine threat to the Ewing's home and the other homes in that space.
We would certainly agree to that.
A prohibition against any sort of fires in that open space would be a good thing.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Hearing none, would someone like to make a motion to close the public hearing? We have a motion from Peter to close the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Could I just ask one more question?
Of course.
In terms of the entrance, turning towards the north and not wanting to have to disturb more land, Does that mean that the land that would have been disturbed is going to remain forested, or is that going to be mowed lawn?
Madam Chair, just before that question is answered, you do have a motion, a second on the table. It would
Close the public
be
hearing.
appropriate if the-
Yes, why don't we have a second, and then that can be part of our further discussion.
Second.
Second from Paul. Robin, you have the floor.
Well, I just said what I was going to say.
Hello, David Manoni. So I believe you're referring to the road turn?
So you're looking for a waiver from the 100-foot
Right.
buffer, right? And so you said, so the entrance turns north because you would have much more significant land disturbance
Mm-hmm.
if you didn't take that sharp turn north. Does that imply that that land that would have been disturbed is going to remain forested? Or is that going to be mowed lawn?
It implies that that land will not be cut or filled, so it'll be undisturbed during construction. Most of that property is going to be part of Lot 4, and it will be up to the owners of Lot 4 what they do with it from there.
So then the only reason you're asking for the waiver is so that you don't have to disturb land that might end up disturbed anyway?
Well, it wouldn't be disturbed in the way that it would be disturbed if we put a road in. If we had to cut, 3 feet off, you're talking about serious land disturbance with trees being removed, vegetation being removed.
Sure, understood.
Yeah.
And do you have I think we saw it last time, a photograph of the revisions that were made to the entrance based on planning board input? Do you still have that? Brian, can you pull that up?
Stone wall on this road that we want to maintain. By moving that, we squeeze this area. We want to maintain that stone wall that runs the full length of that.
Okay. One of the applicants, Earl, has just mentioned another reason for the layout of the roadway is we have laid it out in accordance with the existing stone walls on the property. So as you see, there's existing walls, and the roadway that goes up north, the shared driveway that is shared between Lot 12 and Lot 1, runs north along an existing stone wall. And that's what we're trying to maintain that and go along the stone walls to help implement and show the natural resources of the site.
The stone wall is to the left of the road?
It's to the right. Well, there's a stone wall south of the main road, and then the stone wall to the right of the shared driveway that runs north adjacent to Lot 2.
I don't see how that affects why you had to turn north so abruptly. Is there a stone wall along that entrance drive?
I'm one of the applicants. My name is
State your name for the record, please.
Earl Greco. One of the reasons that we wanted the width on, and we asked for relief on 1, 2, and 3 is there's a stone wall that runs from north to south. If you look right at the curve, when you meet that curve in front of Lot 2, there's a continuous stone wall that runs the full length of the property. We want to maintain that stone wall. Most of this design was based on existing stone walls. If we were to move that an extra 25 feet, we had asked for 60 feet because we thought it would give us more relief. Even at 75 feet, those lots are as narrow as we could make those and maintain that stone wall. We didn't want to lose that. We're trying to maintain that and the other existing stone wall that runs to the south of the road that runs perpendicular to that. So, right there, exactly. And then if you can see, maybe you could point out the other one that runs north to south on the, yep, that's a stone wall there. We're trying to maintain those stone walls. They're nice, natural features.
Not, I still don't quite see why the road has to turn north abruptly. Isn't the question, couldn't it
If you look,
headed west more than north for a while, and then you'd get a larger buffer?
if we headed west,
Yeah, and maybe I'm interpreting it incorrectly, but I thought,
the topography
The road
changes,
is-
the topography changes at that point. And I think the point David was making is that the further west we go, the more of a cut and fill and the more we disturb that property.
that would, and there are trees in there. And just to address the tree issue, there are a number of trees that we intend to keep on this property. It's, it's difficult to survey 21 acres of property and identify every tree on it. But by cutting that down, that also becomes a natural buffer when you're looking from South Road. So we like that the topography goes up there and that the road follows that around. I think that's the point David was trying to make, that it makes sense to do that with the topography, and then we immediately tie into the existing stone walls that run north to south and east to west.
And Mr. Greco, while we have you here,
Yeah.
unless, do you have another question, Robin?
Well, no, I believe I see what you're saying, but I think getting back to, well, will it remain forested so that if I look from South Road, I see that forested hill instead of whoever buys that lot clears it anyway?
Yeah, we will save as many trees on that property line as we can doing that. Initially, when we asked for a 60-foot, there were trees there that we wanted to keep, but we kept increasing the size of the buffer on South Road, which I understand. But at this point, we're at a point that if we do cut that down, we're going to decimate that lot 4. We're going to just take that right down, and we'll also cut into the stone walls, which are, if you've walked through there, the stone walls are a beautiful feature that we want to keep.
I totally hear you there.
Yeah.
And maybe that's some type of homeowners agreement that we could have, that we see that that doesn't get cleared, so that the view from South Road still sees wooded.
Yeah, I mean, if there is a tree warden or someone that we could work with that,
I have an answer for that.
okay.
Well, keep going if you...
Yeah, I mean, even with identifying trees on property lines, it benefits us to have trees on property lines. I think it's a great idea. For us to dissect this and surgically give you everything on something that's hypothetical is just too costly to do that. We've spent thousands just identifying the trees that are there. If you have a tree warden that we can work with, and to address Jamie's point there, which I thought was an excellent point on lots 1, 2, and 3, to have some type of a budget to enhance that buffer, I think it's a great idea. On lots 10, 11, and 12, I don't agree with that because I feel like we've gone 50% beyond the required buffer with that. But as far as trees that we could save and replacing on a 2-to-1 ratio, the other recommendation I would have is that if we could work with a tree warden and any tree that was lost during construction, we would identify existing trees of equal size and health and replace them with that so the number never changes.
I think that's preferred because then you have a more...
Yeah, then you have a mature
anyway.
tree there. And if you have someone we could work with during construction, we're perfectly willing to do that.
Right.
It makes for a better development. I think it's a more valuable development to do it. I just can't tell you every tree that we would save at this point. These lots are not surveyed at this point because it would be crazy to survey lots before they're approved.
I think that my concern is that we're often asked for a waiver for a buffer, and then you drive by a development later and you see through a little bit of trees and you see what you wish you couldn't see. And so to grant a waiver, I'm looking for it to be justified, and I hear what you're saying.
Well, I mean, we would have gone in with a comprehensive plan if that was our intention. I mean, we went in with with a plan with 40% open space. Our intent has always been to keep this as much vegetation as natural as we can. I also wanted to make a comment to the neighbor in Genesee Way. If we look at that, if we could bring that plan back up again to show the property to the west there, there is a portion that abuts their land that is not wetlands at all, which would have been our first choice for the viewing area because it's not wetlands. If we could bring the wetlands map up again, what map would that be? What number is that? E2. What is it? E2. Could we, E2, right there. If you look at the flagging there, and the property that abuts the Ewing's property is actually not wetlands. That is an area that would have been a perfect place for us to terminate the path. But out of respect to the neighbor, we kept it as far away as we could. We did take the neighbors into consideration there. But unfortunately, whatever you do, it seems like it's never enough. And also, we didn't explain that when we did that. But our first choice was to go into that area, which is not wetlands, and have that be the viewing area there and the termination of it. But we kept it, 275 feet away, just to answer that, that grievance there.
And Mr. Greco, there was a reference to the potential for shrinkage of the buffer, and I believe that you folks are planning to have not only monumentation to make that clear where that area is, but it would also be advisable, once we get to the motion, to add that that information is incorporated into the deeds.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that there should be monumentation, and there should be, my wife and I hike all the time on a lot of all the paths that we can find in Rhode Island, and a lot of them will have rules of the path, and as much as people are saying we don't want a path there, the path actually protects the wetlands and protects the neighbors because it defines an area rather than people just walking out there. So I think in a way we need to take a good look at that and what it does. It is thought out. All of those things have been thought out, and we will include those in the bylaws.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Is there any additional comments? Paul? No? Hearing none, would someone like to make the motion to close the public hearing? Motion from Peter, second? Oh, sorry. Who was the second?
Paul.
I want to have that written down, Paul. Okay, just so we have it recorded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We have a fairly lengthy draft motion that I think we ought to have a look at, since we added a few things in our conversation. I would like to have board members consider that on page... Yes, unless they're relative to what we would like to see in the conditions. Certainly, I want to be sure that it begins on page 8 and continues to page 9. Condition number 12, which relates to the ENS plan, particular attention should be directed to the limits of disturbance in the vicinity of basin located west of the proposed cul-de-sac to protect the existing vegetated habitat. And wondering if we need to emphasize the fact that that requires delineation and a regular inspection schedule, or is that a given? I just want to be sure.
So, Madam Chair, typically, in any application that moves forward, they're required to submit a erosion sedimentation control plan to public service. Public service handles the inspections associated with that delineation and tree clearing limits. We can absolutely add language that clarifies that with regards to prior to any construction disturbance, grading, excavation, grubbing, tree cutting, that the limits of clearing are marked in the field, reviewed by staff. We can add that language.
Thank you. That delineation is always important before you get someone out there with their backhoe. The other thing is that a reference to what my conversation with Mr. Greco this evening, number 15, the applicant shall submit language associated with the long-term management of the development's open space. The language should clearly spell out the HOA's management strategies associated with the care of the open space and the vegetation contained within the open space. There are qualified individuals who are foresters. You can get a list of them from NRCS that write forestry management plans for a living. There's an association of a woodland partnership. These folks are very good at developing management plans for the health of the forest, the appropriateness of species, resilience to climate change, and so on. And the homeowners association would be well-served to hire these folks. And in fact, NRCS has programs by which they will put you in a program where there'll be no cost for this kind of service. So, Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is a subgroup of USDA. As Jamie referred to earlier, I would very much appreciate if, in the reference to number 16, where it says administrative officer, I would certainly appreciate if myself, the chair, could also have a look at the landscape plan when it comes to that point as far as supplemental issues. And I think that's referred to on both 16 and 17. We usually pretty much on the same page with that. No, it's not really necessary. And then on number 18, too, there's a reference to trees proposed to be saved during construction, and we usually reference the ordinance that is relative to tree protection. So that should be referenced in that part. 19, we spoke about making a reference, which Mr. Greco agreed to, that the monumentations also be noted in the deeds. And then one thing that's still blank on the conditions is 21, which has to do with the financial security. And Jamie, did you have a figure for that?
We have this in there, Madam Chair, with regards to, in essence, the applicant's ability to move forward to the project, potentially when all of the infrastructure hasn't been constructed, but they're looking for COs. So none of the improvements here are proposed to be in the public realm. So the road, the stormwater, the utilities, the open space are all outside of the onus of ownership or maintenance responsibility of the town of South Kingstown. However, there typically occurs a time when the developer has his storm drainage installed. It may not have been seasoned, and by season grown in, or gone through a spring or fall rain event. And they have 3 homes constructed. They have 2 that have been sold, and people are looking to move in. If they are looking for a certificate of occupancies, at that point, the town will be looking for financial surety to protect the existing purchasers that the improvements will actually be completed. What we wouldn't want is a scenario where the homes were built on a binder course, the certificates of occupancies are then issued, and then we're asking the developer to do the wearing course, and the developer is less than responsive. So I will provide language to you, if it is at your direction and council's guidance, that the financial surety, in essence, are for those items that are outstanding at the time of a request for certificate of occupancy. So that although they're not in the public realm, we will take them under the guidance of responsibility of completion by a developer to ensure a finished product as approved. So it's kind of a hybrid. You haven't had a project before you, I think in 2 years, that's completely been in the private sector, private realm with multiple house lots.
I understand this is based on experience and is a preventative measure more than anything else.
Correct, and it also, without this provision, staff's responsibility would be, in order to receive a certificate of occupancy, the zoning enforcement officer has to determine that they're in compliance with their approved plans, and that's complete compliance. So that would be finish the road, finish everything before a CO is issued. That most developers like to get a majority of their construction done before they put the wearing course on the road.
So, Jamie, are we talking about leaving the amount open at this time?
I think I'll draft.
Because I think the board eventually would need to set
Yes.
the amount. Okay,
The
all
board
right.
needs to set the amount. I want to write the language for the mechanism for the applicant to come back to the board, understanding that they can set an amount and get an amount approved.
So
Stand under
procedurally,
the
how
reg-
would we
It's
do
just so the
that?
applicant understands. The administrative officer has no regulatory authority to set the bond amount, nor does the town engineer. It is only the planning board. But it's unique because the planning board has the ability to set surety for public improvements. This would be setting surety to allow them to issue certificate of occupancy.
So how can we approve that this evening if we don't have that dollar amount?
You give me a few moments.
Okay, will do. Meanwhile, if anyone has any other thoughts as to things that should be contained either in the findings or inclusionary units or conditions of approvals, go ahead, Susan.
So I am looking at item number 15, which I think is what we just talked about having maybe NRCS or some other forestry management service. But I wonder what oversight the planning board has to ensure that an appropriate authority has written this in the language that we would be comfortable with, because this is sort of open-ended. And so I wonder if we add the administrative officer and the chairman of the board, or some other way to just sort of a follow-up with this item, I would be a little more comfortable with some sort of way to follow up on number 15. Does that make sense?
Is that, Amy, is that possible? I mean, you know,
Um,
you're familiar with how the HOAs work and what their enforcement criteria is.
So I think you can add language to this, shall submit to the administrative officer for review and approval, language associated, and then it can read as it reads. So submit for review and approval by the administrative officer.
Thank you, Amy. So then, I guess, similar to what we've done with number 16, I would like to add maybe Maria, or, as the chairman, to also have a look at that. Can we do that too? Does that work?
Sure, I'm pretty familiar with that process and
Right.
forestry plans there.
Yep.
Does those kinds of things all the time.
And then I have one more thing, which isn't a condition on here, but I wanted to just, I think, remind Mr. Greco of a conversation we had a long time ago. Because the buffer is only 75 feet along South Road, I'm hoping that the back side of the houses, which is what we'll see from South Road, will be as pretty as the front of the houses. It's sort of a pet peeve when I drive along and see the back sides and the sides of houses, and there's no windows, and it's a blank wall, and there's an ugly bulkhead, and I know your houses will be beautiful, but if the part that faces Henry Case and South Road were also beautiful, that would be really nice. So I know that's not a condition, but just a request because I can. So thank you.
And a subjective term to boot, but I think
It's subjective.
I understand what you mean.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Again?
If you just give me a moment, Madam Chair.
Yes, certainly.
Madam Chair, going to the discussion that was held tonight, starting with item number 15, the applicant shall submit language associated with long-term management of the development of open space. The language shall clearly spell out the HOA's management plan strategies, etc. The plan shall be prepared by a licensed forester, licensed or registered forester. I'm okay. Again, there may be a little bit of wordsmithing to.
Yes,
to-
understood.
On item number 16, the applicant shall post a landscape buffer, adding to the end of that sentence, prior to the issuance of the building permit and consultation with the planning board chair. So that's the AO as well as the board, planning board chair.
Okay.
Then on 16, that certificate of occupancy shall not be issued until the proposed landscape screening has been installed and improved.
Yep.
Item 17 was a clarification of 2-to-1 ratio. Item 18 was the witness post, which remains unchanged. 19 was the stone walls. 20 is a recommendation.
Did we take something out?
Am I, sorry. I may have renumbered.
The witness post is number 19 on our copy.
Just bear with me. So, oh, sorry. Number 15 is the applicant shall submit language associated with long-term management.
Yes.
Okay. 16 is the applicant shall post a landscape buffer. 17 is a certificate of occupancy shall not be issued. 18 is the applicant shall add a note. 19 is open
And
space.
2-to-1,
Excuse me?
and 2-to-1 ratio.
And 2-to-1 ratio. 19 is open space areas within a development shall be marked. 20 is any existing stone walls that are disturbed. 21 is the applicant, and this is new, the applicant shall submit revised plans to address the town engineer's comments as detailed in a letter dated December 1st, 2022. The revised plans shall be reviewed and approved by the planning board's administrative officer in consultation with the town engineer. That is regarding comment number 1, sheets E1, E2, and E3, comments A through I, sheet 2, L1, A, BMP operating and maintenance plans, comments 1 through 4. The applicant testified that they agreed with all of those and would make those revisions. Those were associated with conflicts with swales, utilities, fire hydrants, and BMP plans.
Back up to 19. Open space areas be marked with witness posts and noted in deeds. Did you?
Thank you. .22 would be the applicant shall plant 5 white pines at the rear of AP 47-2, Lot 17, between the 2 abutting properties. Item number 23 would be the applicant shall submit an HOA agreement that restricts the future development of open space as designated on the approved site plans. The only hardscape that shall be allowed may be a small bench and sitting rock at the terminus of the walking path. Fire pits and/or fire pit type structures shall be prohibited from the open space areas. Number 24, the applicant shall post financial surety in the amount subject of review by the planning board for any approved items associated with the development of infrastructure and/or landscaping and drainage features as prescribed by town regulations. The type of financial surety shall be reviewed and approved by special legal counsel. And that is associated.
You've lost us on the numbering again.
Okay.
22 that we have is prior to the initiation of site disturbance activities?
Correct. I've added 2 new ones, so the new
Are coming before that?
started prior to
Okay.
that. The new one would be the HOA, then the financial surety. Prior to initiation of site disturbance, that would be 25. The developer shall record a new deed as part of the final submittal. What I've added also to that paragraph is the monitoring agreement shall include architectural renderings of the proposed market rate and affordable units. The administrative officer shall review and approve the proposed architecture to determine similar type and quality, architectural style. That came up in the planning board. If you remember, their single-family unit they showed was identical to the duplex unit they showed. They were one and the same. So by state law, we need to determine that they're like kind and quality. And as part of the final submittal, the applicant shall submit final legal documents.
And do you need to state a dollar amount for 21?
For the surety,
Yes.
that will be, the only thing left could be 2 trees or fix a catch basin, or it could be a larger amount of pave the entire wearing course of the road. What will be required is them to submit a cost estimate, be reviewed by the AO in consultation with public service, and then it would require future board action. Again, that dollar amount could be 200,000 or 20,000. Undeterminable at this time. Even if you set an amount of $500,000 now, in all likelihood, they'd be coming in to reduce the $500,000 to another dollar amount. I don't think it would cause a delay in anything.
Okay, good.
So what's our final item number on conditions of approval? It's 1 through
28.
28.
We have a revised motion. Would someone like to make that motion?
Actually, could I ask for one little bit of clarification before we do this? Because I'm a little bit lost. Can you tell me what our final determination was for buffers, for size of buffers? Because there was something in some text tonight that,
So in the text or in the applicant's submittals?
in whatever we're agreeing to.
You are not changing the applicant's proposed buffer requirements on the site plan.
Okay. Because there was something in one of the letters tonight that talked about whether we were willing to change
So-
anything else.
So staff is making the recommendation of the landscaping on the 3 northern lots and the 3 easterly lots. You received correspondence from the developer
Yes.
stating that their opinion was that they would agree to the northern buffer if it was, they would agree to the northern landscaping supplement if the planning board were willing to go back to the required buffer. Staff is still recommending that you stick with the buffer proposed by the developer and supplement the landscaping adjusted to the actual location of the housing unit.
On the east,
East,
not the north.
it's for both. The draft motion you have before you is for both.
So we're doing 75 feet on the east with a $2,000 surety for each lot.
1, 2, 3. Yep.
Yep. And we're doing the same thing on the north. And reducing that buffer from 100 feet to,
Not reducing the buffer.
It was approved at 75 feet at master plan with the consideration to probably revisit that. So it remains at 75 unless the board had decided to change.
got it. Thank you for that clarification.
Anything else? Would
Attention to
someone-
detail, Susan.
Would someone like to make,
Said we want to be attentive to the detail.
would someone like to make the revised motion?
It's so long.
Nobody wants to read that much.
I've got it. Unless you're doing it. The following motion with associated findings and conditions of approval is being offered for consideration by the planning board during, and should be amended accordingly. Okay. South Kingstown Planning Board hereby grants preliminary plan approval to the Northwoods Major Subdivision, a 16-lot major subdivision and flexible residential design project containing 15 parcels for single-family development and 1 parcel proposed for the development of a duplex for a total of 17 dwelling units located near the intersection of Curtis Corner Road and South Road. The True North Land Company LLC applicant, Earl Greco and Michael O'Brien owner. 14 of these units will be market-rate housing units, and 3 units will be deed-restricted for low and moderate-income occupancy ownership. The approval is based upon the following sheets included in the plan set entitled Major Subdivision Flexible Design Residential Project Preliminary Application Plan for Northwood Subdivision, AP 47-2, Lot 120, South Road, Curtis Corner Road, South Kingstown, Rhode Island. Owner applicant, True North Land Company, LLC, dated January 30th, 2022, with revisions through July 28th, 2022. I'm assuming I don't have to read all of these specific plan items into the record. Approval is based on the following findings of fact and conditions of approval. Findings of fact A through I, and then findings of fact for inclusionary zoning and affordable units, J through O, and conditions of approval as amended, 1 through 28.
We have a motion from Paul. Do we have a second? Second from Peter. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. I'd like to thank the applicant for their diligence and willingness to be flexible. Also, Planning Board and staff for their detailed review, and the public for coming out to multiple meetings.
Thank you very much. It's been much appreciated, your time and effort.
Yes.
Is it time to go home yet?
I have a request for a 5-minute break somewhat early. Is everyone all right with that? Yes. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
I am at that age.
Or maybe it was the sweat of Mr. Greco staring us down, willing this to happen. I feel like I've known this guy.
My fault. Okay, let's see. We only have 2 more. Signage. What? No, and neither did Robert. I'll say, what are you talking about? Get him out of here. Okay.
Well, there have to be, right? Yeah? And those lots aren't very big. And there's only a 75-foot buffer? Ooh. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't hear Jamie very well from down here. Talk into your microphone.
No, but, so does the new town council member, Mike Maron, last time, I couldn't hear for Jamie to say, speak into your microphone, Mr. Maron.
You would think so.
Yeah, somebody needs lessons from Jay on how to run.
I know. Well, you should think the other one too.
Go to the acrobat.
Just because of the zone it's in, right? Right, let's jinx that one too. Yeah, and look at all the pictures.
All right, are we all set?
All set.
Let's continue on. Our next agenda item is a public hearing advisory development plan review, 1965 Kingstown Road, proposed change of use from auto repair and service to marine mobile repair and service located at 1965 Kingstown Road. Is there anyone representing the applicant? Come on up and state your name for the record, please.
Yeah, Michael
In the
Garrettson.
hallway, too.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
All right. Hello, my name is Michael Garrettson. I am the owner of Sea and Land Yacht Works. We are a marine service provider, and we specialize in marine electronics and electrical systems. We offer repair, installation, and yearly maintenance services on high-end boats. We are currently located in Narragansett. We are requesting a change of use for 1965 Kingstown Road with the intent to grow our business as we outgrow our current location. Due to the size of our current location, we are unable to hire and train additional technicians and fully support our growing client base. I'm here tonight with Mark Butler, our landscape architect that put the drawings together, and Eric Schultes, who is our commercial real estate agent. As requested by TRC, we have put together a package to meet the requirements. We've provided stamped landscape drawings for the property, meeting Article 4 special requirements. Mark will be able to answer any questions regarding that. We have provided details on lighting equipment that will make the property dark sky compliant. We have moved the service boat parking area to the back of the building as requested by TRC to improve the view of the property from Kingstown Road. To further screen this area from surrounding properties, we have added fencing around this area with arborvitae screening, and have shown a gate that will be installed to block visibility from the road. We have detailed the egress of parking trailers on the property. We will have access to a forklift on the property, and we have calculated the turning radius for a 30-foot boat on a trailer to be 15 foot, which this property has plenty of room to meet. And finally, we have shown the location of ADA parking spaces. We are quickly approaching the deadline to purchase and sales agreement with the current owners, and if we are unable to continue in this process moving forward to zoning, we'll likely have to forgo the property to the owner's backup sellers who will continue using this location as an auto repair shop, and as such, keep it in its current state. As a homeowner in South Kingstown that lives 4 minutes away from this property, and with a son that goes to daycare less than 100 yards away, I am personally invested in improving this area's aesthetics to the best of our abilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garrison. It's certainly an improvement to the site, and the fact that you are removing the invasive Japanese knotweed is totally a plus. Comments from board members or questions? Yes, go ahead.
Hi.
I
I have a bunch of questions.
Okay.
So I guess I see that it was mentioned at TRC. There's a 38-foot curb cut that narrows to 30 feet, but the width of the driveway opening shall be no more than 24 feet in our regulations. Will the driveway be narrowed, or how was that ever resolved?
That wasn't something we had brought attention to. I think it was, as is. What we were going to do is add the required landscape in front of it to do the screening between Kingstown Road. That was the focus of that
Okay.
area.
Does it matter that our regulations say 24 feet?
The,
I think that's what our regulations said.
the regulations state 24 feet. You could potentially reduce the width, but you'd have to have significant radiuses to accommodate the turning movements.
Okay.
So if it's an existing site, they are making a reduction to the width. So I think they are making the best efforts,
Okay.
And they'll be coming
given
in
the
with trucks and
original
boat trailers
configuration
as
of the
well.
site.
And there really isn't a curb cut because there's no curb there. It's sort of like just where the pavement ends. Okay. I'm not complaining, I just wanted clarification. And so for the knotweed, I second Maria, getting rid of the knotweed is great, but it needs to be cut like 10 times a year and dragged off-site.
Yeah, our current location has knotweed along the parking area, and
Yeah.
that's a nightmare.
So it looks like you're adding stockade fencing along that whole northern edge of the property where there isn't any now. And I wonder if you wanted to keep on top of that knotweed, whether or not you'd have access to it to get into that little nook behind the building, north of the building.
Yeah, there is currently a fence there. We're going to be replacing most of it, just based on the age and it falling apart. There is access behind there currently from the front of the building. It's probably about a 5-foot walkway.
Okay. Well, I drove into the neighboring property and looked like right now, there isn't fence there now.
Oh, on the front of the building, so if you look at where the parking is, there is no fence there, but from where the building starts to the back, there is a partial fence. But we're going to be redoing most of that.
Okay. So, sorry, I have a whole little list of questions here.
Of course.
With no stormwater management and a lot of this site being paved, are you planning any activities here that might release fuel or other noxious chemicals onto the pavement, which will then be washed off-site?
No. I mean, our focus is marine electronics and electrical systems. So what we need to do is we need to bring boats in so we have somewhere to work in the winter.
Yep.
So we can install chart plotters and radars and rewire boats and do battery systems.
Okay.
That's going to be the focus of
Is fuel generally drained out of those engines before you work on them?
I mean,
or-
there's strict DEM requirements when it comes to marine engines and
Okay.
fuel and systems. So it's not something that is going to leak out.
Thank you. Sorry, going down my list. So on the south side of the property, I would like to wonder how far the stockade fence extends going out toward 108. Because there seems to be some pretty attractive shrubbery it looks like there's a boat and a car parked there now on the southwest corner. Does that fence go all the way up toward 138, or does it stop? I know it stops short on the north side, which is good because you've got some nice landscaping going in.
I'm Mark Butler, I'm landscape architecture of the project. Yeah, we have the fence ending kind of right where you can see that, my point?
Existing deciduous tree.
Right now, there's a kind of a scrubby maple that's there that would come down. There's a U on the adjacent property which would stay in place. That fence would come down, it would run along the back side of the existing maples. There's one nice looking oak there. Those would all remain. There is a fence line currently there, but the panels have fallen down, so you can see the old posts, and we just extend that straight up. Looks like it's about 30, 40 feet off the main road.
Thank you. Would you consider, and this is just my opinion, not running that fence so close to the road so that as folks are driving on the roadway, you'd have green shrubbery and other things there instead of a wall of fence?
Absolutely. I mean, less fence would be cheaper for us, so.
I prefer less fence, but that's,
Yeah.
I'm one of 7, so that's just
Yeah,
my
yeah.
opinion, is just, I would, for me, stop it closer up to the building and let that be green and
Yeah, and that
more of
would
a
be great,
natural.
because that would be our anchor point for the fence that, or the gate that will block the back end and do the screening for the.
Okay, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have some more questions, sorry. I know you, I took your class. Wow, that was a long time ago. Sorry. Okay, so you've added in a couple of handicap spots, but there seems to be a large bay there now. Is that bay becoming no longer a bay, and are you going to change that facade so that it might be a little prettier from the road?
That bay we're going to be using for a fabrication area, for fabrication for different installations, so it's gonna be like a wood shop mostly. I don't plan on changing the door out because being able to open that up during the summer when it's warm out would help with airflow. But it's a super low bay, I think it's a 12-foot door, so we wouldn't be able to bring in boats there anyways.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't affect your ability to park handicap cars there?
No.
Okay. So I got so many little questions. So there's a spot on one of your maps that shows that you have, it says area of encroachment. Is that because you have a fence there now that you're moving it closer into your property line? So you've been, sorry, not you, the previous owner's been encroaching and now you're moving it back to the property line?
Correct.
I also wanted to comment on the plant selection, which I think is excellent. Very happy, my sparkleberry, winterberries, and it's good choices, you've made great choices. And I especially like the addition of the green space on the northwest part of the lot, up where those cars are parked. The green space is good. Thank you. And that's all I have, thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from board members? Anything from staff?
Just, Madam Chair, just a couple clarification items in the motion, just so everybody understands what the applicant's requirements are. I would make a recommendation on the motion to include item number 7, that the applicant shall submit a final fence, design details, and gate design details for review and approval by the planning board's administrative officer. The approved details shall be added to the plans to be recorded. The plan shall be consistent with the architectural style of the building as represented during the application process. Chain link fence shall not be an acceptable material. Item number 8, the site plan shall be modified to eliminate approximately 20 feet of fence along the southerly property line closest to Route 108. Item number 9, that the applicant shall be prohibited from washing any vehicles, boats, and/or equipment on the property. And I do, if Ryan, excuse me? If you are washing a car on a commercial facility, I believe you need to do stormwater management, and there is no stormwater management or pre-treatment even to a detention basin on the site. It's a commercial property. It's a repair facility.
So, but they might do shrink wrapping, so wouldn't they need to wash them before they shrink wrap them?
No, we generally don't wash boats before we shrink wrap them.
Up to the owner, huh?
What?
Up to the owner to do before they come to you.
Absolutely.
Actually, potentially, Peter, to answer your question, perhaps we add the language that the commercial washing of, I mean, I would say if the owner washes his car there, it's different than if the owner washes all of our cars there. Okay. So we can clarify that language. Brian, if you can just relinquish screen control for a moment. Again, the discussion on the style and architecture of the fence, this is an example we've used in other municipalities as well as South Kingstown for dumpster enclosure. It's a typical cedar wooden fence. It has a solid 4 to 5 foot bottom and just a 2 foot ornamental kind of lattice screen. it is both a solid fence as well as operational gates. This is an enclosure for a pump station in a community, and that has been in existence for approximately 5 years. Those gates are open regularly, and again, I have the details and architecture for that, as well as the footings needed to support the gate install. So again, I just want it clear that it's something similar to that, whether it's stockade or white or PVC product, that there's some architectural feature to it. It's not, we'll use the term quickly
Solid.
bought at Home Depot and put up along the property line or as a gate, and that a chain link fence with vinyl slots in it does not count as a screening fence.
Would this require then that, some of the fencing is still in decent condition? This would require then everything would be replaced to meet architectural
If the
style?
landowner was replacing the fence that existed in kind, from my perspective, they could replace what is there. If they are proposing, as they are, a new gate, that gate should match some type of architectural feature to the existing building. And I thought this was somewhat representative.
Can you clarify? I'm just a little confused still. So like if we were to say, if portions of the fence currently and the styling that is there is still usable and we fixed certain areas and added extra fence, then with this architectural feature, then that would necessitate that everything gets replaced?
No, so just for clarity, new fence, so if the existing southerly property line in essence has a standard wooden stockade fence, if you're replacing sections of that are in ill repair, you can replace that one for one.
Okay,
Okay?
yeah,
If 2 years from now you decided to take the stockade fence completely down,
okay,
that you would clarify the type of fence you're replacing,
okay,
and the detail would already be on the plans.
okay.
Okay.
Anything else from anyone? We have a motion that begins on page, oh. Oh, sorry. Anyone who wishes to speak? Sorry. We've resolved so many items, it was, please come up and state your name for the mic.
Hi, I'm James Murdoch. I actually live within the Kingstown Road Special Management District on Greenwood Drive. So my street actually comes out facing the driveway and facing Pierce Imports in this building. And I'm here to say that I love this. My wife and I spent a lot of time with the drawings. She has a degree in landscape architecture and plant science, and she poured over all the plants, and the addition of those 3 London plane, I'm an electrical engineer, so I have to remember what she said, but these are gorgeous trees. There's another tree like that down the road. There's just a lot good about this, and knowing how long this has taken, and that there's a backup buyer who would just keep it in the same use that wouldn't get all of the benefit of this update. I am inclined to see everything good about this, but I think it's genuine. Auto repair is a lot more traffic than this. There's cars in and out, new customers every day. There's delivery of parts. I come out there and and the Pierces have been repairing my cars. I bought cars from them for 30 years. So I'm very familiar with the lot, with the building, and I think this is great, just a great upgrade. The gate Was that imposed by the board, or is that something the applicant wants? Do you want this gate? So, I'd dump the gate. It's an alley, and I have a photograph. I wasn't even thinking about the gate, but if you look at my picture, why don't you pass it around? Yeah. What you see, so that's what it looks like when you're driving down my road and approaching that. And to the side of the building, you just see that fence going off into the horizon. There's one spot only, you'd have to stop your car in the road to actually see all the way down that alley to something that's in the back. And the reason I think the gate kind of doesn't make sense is I own a trailer, and backing up the trailer as it's shown on the drawing all the way down that alley to back a boat in, you have to steer your vehicle a little bit. You need a little bit of space, left and right, especially if you're making a three-point turn here. And that, so to me, that gate is going to be a burden on the owner, and it doesn't deliver a benefit to the neighborhood because there's nothing unsightly to see. It's an alley down a path, and I've never noticed, I didn't even know vehicles were parked back there until I had to go pick up a car, and he said it's out back. So, not my business. If the gate stays, it doesn't bother me. The other thing that in your conditions, there's another thing that I don't really care about, but just doesn't seem practical. Boats, conditions of approval, boats and boat trailers shall not be parked or stored in any areas in front of the building. All boats delivered to the site pending service shall be stored behind the side gate in the rear of the site. It's okay if somebody drives in and then parks and goes inside and talks, and there's a boat parked there for 3 hours or even a day, or I don't know. It seems like there could be a circumstance where it takes a day for the boat to get parked around back, or what's being done is brief. I don't know. I do like the idea of any operations being done in back, but from a practical matter, it wouldn't surprise me if I drove past and saw a boat hooked up to a vehicle standing there for a few hours. It's part of doing business. So I just wrote, beyond 3 days or something like that, to just as a practical matter. But again, no skin off my back. The storage of boats and boat trailers shall only be allowed for boats scheduled for service of the facility. Any seasonal, long-term storage of boats or trailers are prohibited. I don't know how you enforce that. Personally, I actually wouldn't mind if there were boats parked in back because you wouldn't see them from the street, although foremans might see them. So I don't know how you enforce the long-term boat storage because the use allows it. So that's just me being sort of curious about how you can have that condition when the use allows it, and there's no real enforcement for it. So it seems a little odd to me. Then again, I'm not asking for that change. Your findings of fact, and this is another sort of technical nit because I've been involved in the Special Management District since its inception. I think there's another way you could look at this. on the page 2 of the memo section, it says, Section 604, Kingstown Road Special Management District, construction of any new use or significant expansion of any existing use. And I don't see this as either of those. I see this as existing construction occupied by a new use, not involving changes. They're just using the building as is. And, you know, obviously, everything that follows here is as if an all-new plan, like Dollar General, all this was imposed on Dollar General, and they met it. But for this, they're just occupying this building. The building happened to be compatible for this new use. The new use isn't, you know, something very different. It's actually kind of similar. So I would say that this is not construction of the new use or significant expansion of any new use. And therefore, I don't see this as a big giant waiver of a whole bunch of conditions that should have been applied. And because in the way the code is written, if the code can all be wiped out because, as it says here, regulation is impractical and will exact undue hardship, I don't like that as a reason for just like killing a bunch of stuff. But I don't see this as even being applicable because it's not construction of a new use. They're just occupying what's there. And I love the fact that being a new use, we can require, and in the special management district, we can require the landscape plan. And I love this landscape plan. And in fact, if they don't get this and it just goes to auto repair, it's unchanged. And that's what I hope doesn't happen. Even though I love Craig and Barbara Pierce and I have to find a new mechanic now, I'd rather this happen. I think it'll be a big upgrade. So whether you change that or not is also just more of a curiosity to me. The one ask that I have is, actually it's not even a change. Where's my picture? The thing I circulated, did I get it back? Yeah, the photograph. Who's got the photograph?
And add it to our file as part
Oh,
of.
it's gone? Can I look at it? You didn't burn it, did you? I took that actually because of the lighting. The existing fixture, I remember the day that went up, this existing fixture, it's like a giant floodlight just pointed out. And I really appreciate that the requirement be a dark sky fixture. And I looked at the spec of that fixture, and it says it's only dark sky compliant if it's set at 0 degree angle, which turns it, I actually suggest a different fixture, that's all. It almost turns it into a wall sconce that will just light up right at the building and really won't light up the whole parking area. And I don't know, maybe you don't care if you light up the whole parking area and you just want the front of the building lit up.
Could you just speak in the mic and restate your name for the record so that the tape...
Michael Gerritsen. Yeah, I spoke to Helco directly to figure out what the best piece of gear that would be to replace that, and this is what they recommended. I know they have some add-ons, but this is, you know, as experts, I just went with what they recommended.
And if you could just address your comments to the board, and then we can have everybody answer all the questions that are relevant. Easier that way.
Okay. Well, the request and what's on the drawing, I think, is fine. I would like to see them have the flexibility to do something in the future if they should want to light up more of the area. Because your stipulation that it be exactly as done in the drawing sounds like, unless in 1 year they can do what they want, because I see there's a guarantee of 1 year. But if it's not lighting up their lot and they want to light up their lot, I would like to see lighting that does not point toward the street or point toward the abutters. For example, lighting that's mounted on a utility pole pointing at their building would nicely light up the lot and their building. What's on there right now, and that's what's on there right now, I think the light on the plan in 0 degrees would be fine because it's just pointing down. But I would even volunteer to help, choose to help with a lighting plan, because I've got some experience in this. If there's a need to light up more of the area than what this does, because I think that chosen fixture will just light up at the building and won't light up the lot, and it might not be what they need, and you're kind of shutting the door on them doing anything in the future if they have to abide by the plan as written. So I was just suggesting if there's some language that gives them flexibility to augment what's on here, and I don't want it, I want you to give them a green light tonight. I don't want to do anything that slows us down, but just augment what's on here to say if future lighting needs to not shine out on the street or on the abutters. Something simple like that. I think that's it. But I love this, and I can't wait.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Jamie, could you perhaps give us a little bit of background information on the TRC request relative to the gate, to the parking in the foreground, and the potential for lighting modifications?
So, Madam Chair, with regards to the light, I think in discussions with the applicant at TRC and as well as the applicant's discussion with planning board staff within our department, the gate serves a dual purpose. It's intended to potentially screen what could be viewed as unsightly storage of equipment or things under repair. It also serves the purpose of security for the owner. I know in a number of marine operations, and this isn't specific to their operation, but there are occasions where boats on trailers that are unsecured can be hitched during the wee hours of the night and be simply driven off a site that does not have a gate. There are also vehicles that are held for repair. They are stored for 6 months. There are bills owed. The applicant or landowners for mariners are allowed to charge for storage for boats that are not being picked up. Those bills are sent to owners, and then all of a sudden the boat is no longer on the property. So the owner of the property stored the boat for 6 or 7 months, couldn't take ownership of the boat, was due a significant amount of financial resources, and then the owner appears on the off hours, hooks up to the trailer, and pulls the boat off of the site. So again, I think the intention by the applicant is to have the fence serve a dual role, and that is the ability for the landowner and operator to secure both boats that people are dropping off for repair, as well as potentially screen the site from passerbyers. With regards to the lighting, Again, I just wrote some language down during the discussion that all exterior lighting shall be night sky compliant and any building lighting shall be shielded / downcasted from view and only be allowed as shown on the approved site plan. Unfortunately, under DPR review, I don't know a mechanism for after-the-fact lighting plans to come in that just have administrative approval. This is if there was a full request to light the rear of this property, staff would ask for a lighting plan. We would ask for lumens plans as it's associated with impact to the abutting residential property. A couple of members mentioned that they were on-site and adjacent to the site. There is a substantial residential development just to the south of this property. It is a 2-story building. The second floor windows of that residential property look directly into the rear of this property. So I would be extremely concerned about the planning board's inability to review a future lighting plan if so desired by the applicant. I wouldn't want to delay the permitting process and require the applicant to come back, but the applicant, the motion that staff drafted does not prohibit the applicant from coming back to the planning board with a supplement request to add a lighting plan to the rear of the property.
Thank you, Jamie.
And just for clarity, in response to Peter DeStefano's on number 9 and our recommended condition, the applicant shall be prohibited from the commercial washing of any vehicles, boats, and/or equipment on the property. So it's not intended to be a wash your car or wash your boat facility.
Anything else from planning board members?
Yes. So can I also understand, I think we just brought it up, the parking of boats in front of the building? And you saw pictures of what it looked like under the previous ownership, and some of those cars were there so long they were like a piece of furniture. The long-term storage of boats in the back, if we can't see it or know about it, feels to me like a business decision that he might make internally if he wanted to store a couple of boats in the back, and it wouldn't affect us. But also, I'm not understanding the prohibition against parking any boats in the front yard, especially in light of the way the site has looked for a long time.
I have a suggestion about that.
Yeah.
First of all, do we need a motion to close the public hearing, or?
Not yet.
Okay. I was just jotting down here, boats shall not be parked overnight or outside of normal business hours. I think that gets to somebody pulls in, the boat's there for 3 or 4 hours before they have an opportunity to move it to the back or into the garage, but, we wouldn't necessarily want half a dozen boats parked out there over the weekend. Although
Do we care?
I don't. I think a seaside town, boats in front of a business, but I can understand where others might.
But we also,
I think it's reasonable.
I guess I would like to make sure he has enough flexibility to be
Right.
able to operate his business. If he's got a queue going and he's really busy and he's got a lot of boats on queue, I would hate to see him have to turn business away because he couldn't park the boat out front overnight.
Well, I
There's
think-
got to be a little flexibility that he can
think
do his business.
My recollection of the last time we talked about this was that these are primarily trailerable boats and that people don't bring them in until they're scheduled for service. It's not, because it's electronics, it's a boat on a trailer, people bring them in when they're scheduled for an appointment the next day, or, is that?
Can I make a comment?
We're discussing you like you're not even in the room, sorry.
Yeah, Michael Garrettson. So there's times that I did, yeah, Michael Garrettson. So there are times that we'll have a client and they'll be like, hey, I don't get off of work until 5 o'clock. I need to drop my boat off. They might drop it off at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. We did have a designated drop-off zone for those boats out in the front on that drawing. So our plan was, that's probably a very rare occurrence that's going to happen because we want to, obviously take the keys, get contracts signed, take care of all the paperwork that we need to do. So if there was any flexibility for us to, not have to, wait there until 8 o'clock one night because a client's dropping their boat off, that would be super helpful with our business.
So Madam Chair, if I can I understand discussion. I think the intent is that boats will not be displayed or stored long-term in areas designated as parking spaces for the public who is visiting the repair facility. This is a street view of a boat at a facility. That is different than a car, as well as I think this is relevant to the abutting residential property. There is a car in the foreground, and there is boat storage behind that. That is a very different aesthetic view for the traveling public on 108, as well as the residential property located to the south. The applicant in his submission did not propose to park any boats out front. He submitted written testimony that everything will be stored to the rear of the property. I understand the discussion, but again, it wasn't part of the application. Understand that a boat could be dropped off, as he said, at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. That would be removed from the front and put in the rear. And the reverse of that could be, can you put my boat out front so I can pick it up tonight? My bill is paid at 8 o'clock. So I would say that potentially could happen. It shouldn't be a normal course of business. But the reality is a zoning enforcement officer going to go out there and determine if the boat was there on Monday and what is it there on Thursday? The boats are then shuffled. To me, from a regulatory standpoint, the applicant hasn't asked to store boats in the front of the building. He said for a delivery.
Michael Garrettson, I'm not asking to store them. This, when storage, you think of maybe a week or, they're waiting to get worked on. This is more of like a drop-off situation. Maybe within, I don't know.
So how about on condition number 2, if we just amended it to say boats and/or boat trailers shall not be stored?
Yeah.
And then get rid of the parked, because I think that's where it might be limiting his ability to do a pickup and drop off.
Correct.
Short-term scenario. If we got rid of the word parked and just say it's stored, stored's kind of vague. I don't know what stored even means. Is that like a day, a week? I don't know what stored means, but I think limiting him from parking is maybe I see the problem there with that text.
Madam Chair, again, being in the planning realm and enforcement realm for 30-plus years, if a boat is parked there for an hour for someone to pick it up, I wouldn't consider that either stored or parked. It's a transaction that's occurring within an hour or so. They are going to be turning around boats within the parking field every day as a normal course of action. It will become extremely difficult from an enforcement standpoint. And again, you are approving a site. It is not a contract with a particular owner. So this is devoid of ownership. So if it is for this use, it is for the use on this property and not for an individual. So this owner may say, there will not be a boat there for more than an hour, and there's a new owner 20 years from now, and they're going to say, well, it doesn't say I can't park them there. They're just parked, they're not stored. Define what parking is, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. And to Peter DiStefano's point, it becomes extremely hard to enforce a 2-day or 3-day limit. I think it's much easier to have potentially the prohibition and understand in the normal course of action and day, there are transitional actions taking place in the front, but they're for delivery and release of a boat. They're not for storage or parking of vehicles.
So should that language then be added to the condition number 2 to clarify it?
Well, to go back to, if we just say overnight, and then the onus is on the business owner. If somebody says, I can't pick up my boat till 7 o'clock, then someone has to hang around till 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
No?
I don't want to sound like the planning director naysayer. With my experience, I can, and again, this owner has said he will not do it. There will be an owner who will take every boat and put it out in the front during the day, hitch it up, and put it in the back at night, and then the next morning, put it back out front. And they will be compliant with your suggested language.
Well,
Because they weren't there
the other thing
overnight.
that comes to mind is that you could see boats parked out there with a for sale sign on them, which is, not that I'm saying.
We won't be able to enforce, is it for sale, not for sale, is it listed, is it
Okay,
not listed?
right.
But we routinely drop our car off the night before when it needs service, because that's just how it works with shuffling our cars around. And so, would this prohibit him from being able to let a customer drop his boat off the night before so that it can be worked on in the morning? I don't know, that doesn't seem fair. I don't even care anymore.
So should there be temporary in there somewhere?
Sorry, I'm just looking at language, sorry.
I mean, that is a good point. It gets dark at 4 o'clock at night, this time of year.
I mean, my sense of this is that we don't want to see a huge number of boats parked along Route 108 as sort of a, visual distraction.
Mike, I'll just list my concern. You have a very tight site. The applicant provided turn-in radiuses for delivery. The ability to deliver a boat, in essence, was that it needed to be pulled in the site, unhitched, and then manipulated with a forklift in and around the site. If someone drops a boat off at night, as a regular practice, it potentially makes the parking lot as designed not functional. Because the next person to drop a boat off can't get into the parking lot because they can't turn around and there's no one there. It becomes difficult from a functional standpoint because they've submitted information that says the parking spaces for employees as well as visitors work as long as there are no boat trailers in that parking lot.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Michael Garrettson. On the drawings, we did have a designated area for the pickup and drop-off. Obviously, we base this site plan on how we can function in this space. We don't want to run into that situation where someone blocks off and we can't pull cars in. That would hurt us, just as much. But on that drawing, if you could bring it up.
Oh, sorry.
So did we decide we're enforcing the gate? And if we aren't, can the drop-off just simply be out back? And then it kind of solves the whole thing? If there's no gate, do you want a gate? Are we having a gate? Can they
Well,
just take the boat out back?
We will have some type of gate. I mean, that gate kind of comes down to whether it's whether it's a bar gate, chain gate, some mechanism. There's going to be something there. It's just a matter of whether it provides the purpose of screening or just security. But on those drawings, we did have an area that we had designated as a drop-off and pickup point. That made it easy for clients not to have to maneuver those vehicles, so they could leave their boat there and we could do the rest of it. If we could have overnight storage for that spot only, that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, I think Mr. Garrison has thought this out pretty well.
Thank you.
If there are no other comments from members of the public, would someone like to close the public hearing? Motion from Peter, second.
I'll second.
Second from Liz. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. What modifications, if any, is there a consensus from the board on any of this?
I have one more question. Is there any lighting right now behind the building in that back lot that might be shining onto Brookdale?
Madam Chair, your public hearing is closed.
Oh, I don't get to ask any questions anymore? Oh, I didn't think he was the public, sorry. Oh, okay.
You can ask Jamie.
So my recommendation in language to be added is all exterior lighting shall be night sky compliant, and any building lighting shall be shielded or downcasted from view and only be allowed as shown on the approved site plan. So I'm sure we can work with the existing owner that if there is a spotlight, that can be adjusted and shielded.
Excellent. Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, I apologize. I was up late last night watching a town council meeting, and I've lost track here. What did we decide about boat and trailer parking in front? Anything? Are we leaving that condition of approval as is? Are we allowing one? Where did we end up with that? One, okay.
In
I'm
the
happy with that.
drop-off area, right?
Okay.
Anything else?
Yes, Susan mentioned in condition of approval 3, long-term storage of boats or trailers is prohibited. And do we care what's parked behind the building all winter? I certainly don't. I mean, I made a note here that we could just strike that sentence, seasonal or long-term storage of boats or trailers is prohibited. Just strike that from the condition 3.
Do we think that would require additional lighting because there's long-term storage?
He can come back for that if that's decided at a later date, I think you said.
The only comment I would make, and I believe it's part of the public hearing record, is the fence that's on the southern property line screens a car from the residential property.
Not at all.
It does not screen a taller boat or a boat on a trailer that's stored there with a vinyl wrap.
So behind the,
Based on the applicant's testimony, I was at the TRC, the idea is to get the boats in, repair them, get them out.
so behind the property, behind that back fence, there are some very tall evergreens. Some very tall, I think they're white pine, which I think would shield, I mean, they're pretty mature trees. I don't recall if there are any on the southern edge between Brookdale and that back parking lot, but I would think the back of the lot, you're not going to be able to see anything through those evergreens, but anyway.
If there's nothing else, would someone like to make the amended motion?
The South Kingston Planning Board hereby renders a favorable recommendation to the zoning board for the required dimensional variance associated with required lot area for the proposed use, and hereby grants development plan approval for 1965 Kingstown Road application, a proposed change in use from automotive repair to retail, marine services and repair with associated site improvements on Assessor's Plat 32-4, Lot 14, located at 1965, Michael Garrison, applicant, Craig and Barbara Pierce, owners. The development plan approval is based upon the plan set entitled Plan from Michael Garrison, lot at Assessor's Plat 32-4, Lot 14, 1965 Kingston Road, South Kingston, Rhode Island, dated August 29th, 2022, and prepared by American Engineering, Inc., 400 South County Trail, Suite A, 201, Exeter, Rhode Island, 02822. Finding facts A through E, and then conditions of approval 1 through, how many do we add?
9,
9,
as amended.
as amended.
We have a motion from Peter, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Susan, is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just for clarity, as amended, there were 10 items.
What was that?
You said there were 10?
10 items.
Oh. 10? All right, so can you revise your motion to 10 items?
I'll add 10.
And the second?
Aye.
All those
Second.
in favor again, say aye, please.
Aye.
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 Madam Chair, I was comfortable with the motion because Peter said the number and as amended.
Yes. Okay. Next agenda item is a public hearing, combined conceptual master plan and preliminary plan, major land development, South County Post and Beam, proposed development, 3 new buildings for unspecified industrial uses and associated site improvements located at 551 Liberty Lane, South County Post and Beam, applicant owner. Is there anyone representing the applicant?
Hi, good evening. My name is David Russo. I'm a professional engineer with DePrete Engineering and the project manager on this project. So this property is AP 21-3, lot 21. The owner and applicant is South County Post and Beam. The acreage is approximately, well, I shouldn't say approximately, it's 6.31 acres. This was a Class 1 survey done by DePrete Engineering. The wetlands on the property have been flagged by a professional wetland biologist. The property is located in an industrial 1 zone, and it has frontage on both Liberty Lane and Fairgrounds Road. As stated, they are proposing 3 buildings. The buildings, when it was read, they do have a specified use. They are an expansion of the South County Post and Beam existing business, which is located right on that turn on the south side of that image you see there. The buildings will be serviced by public and water and sewer. That'll come off of the south end of it, and that has been reviewed by both the sewer department and the water department, and those approvals both have been received. The fire department has also reviewed this for access, and they also were looking into if they felt we needed another hydrant. There's 2 existing hydrants in the area, and they felt that those were sufficient. This project has a RIDM permit. We're controlling the stormwater runoff with sand filters and a infiltration basin located on the west of the property, as shown on the plan above. That will discharge down to the existing wetland area. That was reviewed by DEM, a biologist from DEM, and also an engineer from DEM. The parking on the site, we've shown 64 total spaces. This use requires 1 space per 2 employees. So 64 spaces is approximately 43 employees, which the developer and applicant feels is sufficient for the future build-out of their business. This site is in a groundwater overlay district, which requires the 20% existing or introduced vegetation. This site has 36%, so we meet that requirement. The maximum building coverage in this zone is 80%. We're at 21% on the site. And this project, we had a pre-app meeting with the board a while back. There was a TRC meeting for that pre-app. And then there's been a lot of, we had another TRC with the meeting with the town recently, and there's been a lot of back and forth with the planning department and the TRC and the members of that board. And there's been some modifications to this layout. One of the comments early, if I remember correctly, Ms. Axelrod commented on the size or the expansion on the lot. So the buildings have been reduced. The parking, it's kind of been tightened up on the property, and you can see there's been, I'll say that left side of the site where that pond is, there's a little more green space in that area. We had proposed a landscape plan, and some of the comments during the TRC that we heard was in regards to the eastern entrance. And we originally had that as a 2-way access road. It's a narrow lane over there, and we need to get some drainage in that area. So at the request of TRC, it was asked if we can make that a 1-lane road and kind of tighten it up. We worked with the fire department to get their sign off on that width. It allowed us to get a little bit more landscaping to dress up that entrance and buffer to the abutting property. So that section on the east is a 1-way out on this site. The other entrance is a 2-way. It was also requested at TRC that we analyze an 18-wheel truck coming in and out of this site, which we have done using what's called auto turn, and we can run those trucks through our sites and check that. Part of that was we requested to, if a truck made a turning motion in or out, they asked if we could get it so it didn't cross the lanes of traffic. With that road being narrow, it was difficult, but we have achieved that. And the final comment at TRC, the simple one was we added a garbage receptacle on the north end of the site with some landscaping around that. And then there were some comments about just making sure we had all the parking shown and some bays or entranceways, which we've depicted on the plan. That's a general summary of where this project's gone since we've been here tonight, and we're here tonight for combined master preliminary approval. We feel we have all the approvals necessary to achieve that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you. Mr. Russo, you said there was a, did you say it was a 21% lot coverage? What was the lot coverage?
The building coverage was 21%. Yep.
And how did you calculate the stormwater management for this?
In terms, well, whenever we do stormwater management, we look at the site as a whole. We do a hydrology analysis. This site, we had, the original DM permit had 2.9 acres of pavement. Our calculations are based on that number. So if the applicant, I'll use that green space area in the back because I know that's been a topic of discussion. Originally, we showed overflow parking in that area, and that was a topic of discussion of, well, you're showing it as overflow, but if they go pave it, does it alter your drainage characteristics? And with all the other changes, we decided we didn't even need that. So, our stance is that we've maintained the same impervious area as was previously approved by DEM. We've condensed the site a little bit. So the drainage characteristics through all these changes we haven't had to modify any of the drainage at all, and the limit of works hasn't been modified either.
And you feel that certainly the amount of parking and facilities are adequate, even though you don't know exactly what types of industrial uses will be contained within the buildings?
Right now, the intent is that those would be South County Post and Beam associated with that business, and based on their existing employees, they feel that that number of employees is sufficient.
Comments from board members?
Sure. And I don't know where the discrepancy is. In our project description, we say building 1 is 32,400. Building 2 is 22,500 square feet, and building 3 is 18,000 square feet. Those aren't the numbers. Building 2 is correct, but it's very hard to read because the number is very tiny. But building 1 and building 3 are different.
Are you referring to the staff report? So the staff report numbers, I believe, are the original numbers. So what you're seeing there is actually the ones on our plan, obviously the most current, they've been reduced. So building 2 has remained the same. The other 2 that have been changed, that's due to all the site changes we made in terms of the parking.
What's on the plan you feel is correct?
That is correct.
Okay, could you just repeat those numbers?
It is, it's easier to see up here, actually. It's 13,520 square feet and 21,600 square feet for building 1. So building 3 is 13,520. And then building 2 remain the same.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments, questions? Go ahead, Susan.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I love that you called me out about the green space.
I always remember comments,
Sorry. I might have to mention something again tonight.
even if they're a year old.
Okay. So along the driveway, I love that it's narrower. That's great. So I drove out today, and along that fence that's there, there seemed to be some, I don't know, white cedar, there's some white pine, there's other things growing along that fence on your side. There's some on both sides.
Yeah, on the left side.
Yeah.
Same as you enter on the left.
Not on the Schneider side, but on your side.
Okay.
Are you taking all of that out and then putting in grass, or are you leaving some of that, and some of it I think is junk, like, it's not great stuff.
Yeah.
Some of it is nice, some of there's some white pine and stuff. Are you taking everything out, or are you just picking and choosing, or are you just putting in loam, or are you planting any shrubs, or is there something that, I guess it would be nice because your next door neighbor has a huge expansive parking lot. It's nice if there were some kind of buffer between your driveway and that expansive parking lot.
We weren't proposing to do, along that entrance road on the left side, there's a stone trench that we have to put in for drainage control.
Yes.
But anything outside of that, there is an area between that trench and that existing area that you're talking about, and we weren't proposing to remove any of that if we don't have to.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I think I'm talking about between the driveway and Schneider's parking lot.
On the right side then. So that area on the planting plan, we have,
I think it says loam and seed.
now, if you read, yeah, so there's that note next to it, and it reads, existing vegetation to remain and supplemented with additional planting, and then final planting to be determined in the field. So the intent, and we estimated the 5 trees to remain and be protected as necessary per town requirements. So the landscape architect's intent is to preserve as much of that as we can, and then supplement the new plantings in that area.
In that first, out by the road.
Call it 100 to 120 feet, yeah.
And then as you go along that fence, there's some stuff growing along the fence.
We call that out as lumen seed, but if there's existing plants over there, one of the other aspects, and this is actually really early on that got brought up, was there was a wall along there that went off of that, and there was a wall, and a lot of that had to do with the width of the driveway, and we didn't have a lot of space to work. When this got reduced, we were able to eliminate that wall. So the grading that's along that area has been reduced because of that. So with that reduction in grading, we should be able to preserve those plants, or if there's any plants in that area. The intent wouldn't be to rip it out unnecessarily just to put down lumen seed.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm not an expert in, I don't know anything about surface water and stormwater, but it looks like the north side of the property drops off pretty abruptly toward that wetland. Is the runoff from the roof being captured and directed somewhere? And also the parking lot between building 1 and building 2, will that sheet flow down that embankment and into the wetland because of that drop-off? Yes, up there.
There's two, I understood the first part. The second part, what area are we actually talking about, that parking area between the two buildings?
So, yes, so heading north from that parking lot between the buildings, it drops off 8 feet into a wetland?
Mhm.
Is that water going to flow from that parking lot down that embankment and into the wetland, or is there anything to capture that there?
No, the parking area is directed towards there's a catch basin structure on the south side that it's directed to, so that'll be piped.
We're just going to switch real quick.
Okay.
Sorry, got a new code.
So, it's sheet 7, shows the drainage structures best. So there's some drainage structures on the south side of that middle area that you're speaking about. The building question you had on the roof leaders, obviously we don't have like an architectural plan. We schematically just show a roof leader directly tied into the pond.
Mm-hmm.
In theory, if we got an architectural plan and they wanted to pipe that to the drainage, we could potentially pipe to the drainage. But the intent is that water will go to that pond. We're not allowed to let it directly run to the wetland by state regulations, or by this permit, I should say.
Right, okay, thank you. In your narrative, you mentioned a space of impervious overflow parking, which I assume means pervious overflow parking.
That's been, originally we were actually showing overflow parking. The comment now is more or less where we have this seed mix, is if there was ever a need for overflow parking, we have the space for it. If it went in as pavement, we'd have to relook at the drainage and possibly do something specific to that paved area or expand this. But the intent is right now there's no overflow parking area. So we're not proposing anything or showing anything. If they came back in, say, 10 years and needed that area, we'd have to explore what would be needed for the drainage. The state regs might be different. They could put down crushed stone technically, and you probably don't even really need additional drainage measures. So it's kind of not in the immediate future that we're looking to do anything there. And on this plan, we just show
This is a phased development, so really the intent is building 2 would be phase 1. All of the drainage and the circulation and parking associated with building 2 would be phase 1, and then buildings 1 and 3 could be phase 2 or 3, however they phase it. So that back area where the seed mix is that we have shown, we show it as seed mix. I mean, technically, if you never get to that area, you really don't even have to cut it. I mean, say they built building 2, and they don't build the next ones for, I don't know, 10 years. You may not need to clear all that and cut it down and disturb it all immediately, but the intent was if they do want to clear that and get it stabilized, we're recommending using that conservation mix. It'd have to be mowed maybe twice a year, and it would just grow in, like a meadow grass temporarily until it's ever used, or maybe it's, it just remains that way.
But you don't intend to have cars parked on it?
Not right now, not with all the other parking and circulation we have, no.
Okay. Ooh, that might be it. I think that might be all my questions. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Any other questions or comments from board members? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Hearing none, would someone like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just prior to you close the hearing, staff has a couple questions.
Yes.
Just, Mr. Russo testified tonight that he supplied turning radiuses. Can you clarify what type of vehicle you used? I believe it was a WB50.
That's correct.
Any reason you didn't use a WB60 or 63, which is standard tractor-trailer length at this time?
WB50 is a standard one that we use when we run 18-wheelers. I'm not sure we run those bigger ones. The WB60 is, typically WB50 is the one that we run.
The owners here, does you realize that anything bigger than a W50 does not fit on this site? Does not fit on this site with your turning radiuses?
Well, you need to remember that the parameter you're given to try to meet is that truck, and this is not a wide road, the existing road, so we're working with what we have. The parameter we're given to try to meet is when the truck's coming or going, it needs to be on its side of the road. When you do that, it makes it a lot more difficult. So, I mean, I could go run that type of truck. I'm guessing it'd still get in there. It might not be in the exact lane, but I mean, this type of area, I can't imagine any 18-wheeler going up and down this road, getting in places, is holding that side of the lane because of the narrowness of the road.
Madam Chair, I want to use the term less concerned about the turning radiuses at the entrance. I'm more concerned about the ability of a tractor-trailer to get around that building. Because a W50 makes it. Anything bigger than a W50 does not.
I mean, you can see the parking spaces that we left off at the end, on the very end of the building. A lot of that has to do with that turning radius. So, I mean, we'd be happy to run that and give it to you at final. If we have to change that radius for a WB60, I've never seen, we usually use the 50, but that truck that you see on the entrances, that was run through this entire site.
W50 fits. Anything larger than W50 does not fit.
I haven't run that, so I can't say that. You're just saying that based on your opinion. I haven't run that, so
So I've run the turning templates.
I haven't run it on there. I can't say if it does or doesn't.
WB63 does not fit around that building. It would actually either clip the building, clip a car, or not be able to stay within your paved limits.
I haven't run it, so I mean, we can look at it, but I haven't run that, so I don't know.
Anything, so the perimeters associated with trying to get a tractor trailer in is so that it can stay in its existing travel lane without having to cross the center line. So what they've shown, so what they've shown, I don't know why that keeps showing up.
So what would be the alternate then? They'd have to move the buildings and,
So
it it's not a heavily traveled road.
So this is a tractor trailer leaving the site. So you'll see the gray area is just touching the edge of pavement and the edge of pavement. So if it was a larger truck with trailer, the trailer would go across the lawn area. I'm less concerned about that on this exiting turning movement. Coming around this corner, the tractor actually would have to drive onto the, if it held the traveled lane, when it made the corner, it would pull its trailer across the side of the building. Or the tractor has to go onto the grass where they're proposing landscaping and not make that movement. They've also proposed that they showed turning radiuses for a two-way truck turning movement, but you can't turn into this, you can't exit this site with a tractor trailer because it's not coming in the easterly side. So it's really a one-way tractor trailer pattern.
Are you assuming like they're coming at the same time? Is that what you're saying?
No, so how does this tractor trailer exit when it's, just bear with me, Dave.
Yeah, I'm just.
The tractor trailer is coming in your southwesterly entrance. How does it leave the site? It has to leave easterly. It can't turn around and turn onto the site and come back out.
I'm not sure I follow that question, but Josh, the owner of South County Post and Beam, just confirmed WB50 is big enough for the trucks that they do have for their business. I mean, we've run the WB50 through there, so and we've shown the best we can. I mean, the other thing you need to think about is just from a town perspective is, how wide of an entrance do you want? I mean, you're going to start getting to like a 50-foot wide entrance to try to get trucks in and out.
I'm less concerned about your ability to turn at the entrances. I'm concerned about.
Or if it's that corner, then that works, because they just confirmed that WB50 is plenty, and we ran that WB50. We chopped it off because we knew the entrances were the main concern. So I can provide a WB50 going through there.
I think it would be potentially short-sighted if you didn't at least advise or show what a WB63.
We can look at it. We have no issue with that.
So that you can plan for that.
Yep.
Because you don't want to bring a WB63 into the site and then try and figure out how to get it out.
Sure.
After it dragged across your brand-new landscaping.
We can look at that. I mean, it might just the turning radius, or maybe the pavement has to push out a little there. We don't mind looking at that.
Actually, it would push out to the property line, to the north.
Sure. I mean, the other thing you need to remember, there's a business owner that has a business, and they're saying the WB50 is there. So is the town standard that any business has to run these monster trucks going through? Because you'd end up with like a lot of extra pavement for a business that's not needed for the business. I understand that maybe they don't need it though. Maybe a future tenant would, and then they'd have to look at that. It just seems like more hypothetical than the actual business that's being proposed.
Jamie? So
I was going to ask you to go back up to the plan and go north to that corner that you're talking about. So just by the dumpster there, you're saying that's going to be a grassy landscaped area, but the other side is Schneider Electric. Who's it being landscaped for?
So there's a requirement in your regulations to do perimeter landscaping. There are 2 proposed trees in this corner. If you run anything larger than a WB50, there's a conflict with that landscaping. And again, it's a matter of just planning. It doesn't mean that asphalt has to be expanded. It just potentially means that north and south of that radius is load-bearing, so that if a trailer goes off, it's off onto a load-bearing surface that's skimmed with loam, so that you don't have an issue, the availability to plow and maintain those areas, and also to make sure it fits and the owners aren't dealing with a building and a bollard on the corner and a potential conflict with a structure.
Is the other issue that eastern entrance is one way, and so if somebody comes in, as you said, comes in on the west side, they can't come out?
Yeah, so if a truck were to
come in,
enter in this southern location,
And there's a one-way street on the other
It
side.
goes to the north and heads east. They showed and again, it was a question. They're showing a truck exiting this facility on the southern location. I don't know how it gets in. You know, it gets in, how does it turn around and get out?
If it comes in that way.
Correct. It's not making a three-point turn here.
So does that need to be a do not enter sign so they can't come in that way?
So I think it's just signage for truck routing. Because again, there's two components. South County Post and Beam controls some of their trucking, because it's their drivers, their vehicles, but other deliveries are coming in. And again, it's planning and signage. The last potential comment I have is, there was a discussion that they're not proposing a significant amount of landscaping along Schneider Electric, and they're saving existing vegetation. This is a picture of the existing vegetation. I'm not clear what they're saving. So,
I agree. It's a little scrappy looking, but I would prefer to see some little sapling maples than just driveway, ratty grass, chain link fence, and then a sea of asphalt. Like, I would rather see something than nothing along the fence. So if they're not putting landscaping in and putting in like some nice winterberry along the fence, I would rather see, for me, I'd rather see the little saplings or whatever that is than nothing. That was my point.
And I think the applicant would as well. Is this something you can just demonstrate to us in a drawing so that it's obvious and?
I mean, we do have plantings in that area, and I agree with Jamie, and I think Ms. Axelrod's right too. I think there's a lot of stuff that can be removed in there, but the landscape architect identified there's probably like 5 trees in there that shows identifying to save. I think that's the intent. I agree. There's probably a lot of stuff in there that has no value.
I saw cedar and I saw some white pine.
Yeah,
And I don't know what the other stuff is. It doesn't look great, but it's better than nothing.
And I think that's what we're trying to say, is that if there is stuff over there, there's room to try to save it, we can. There is some stuff in there that can just be removed. It's probably just more of an eyesore than anything.
the only note on the plans is existing vegetation along the fence line for, we'll say, the first 75 to 100 feet is staying, and then the rest of it along the fence line is lumen seed.
Right, and that's why I asked if, and he said they weren't planning to take out shrubs just for the sake of putting down loam and seed.
They already took them out.
No, I drove by today. I went to Schneider Electric today.
They already removed them. What was there as existing vegetation in previous aerial photos was removed in preparation of this driveway.
So right now, along the fence, it looks like that.
Yes, there's scrub, brush, and early woodland revegetation.
Yes.
That
So I don't know what was there 5 years ago, but for now, there is some low shrubbery along the fence.
what was there 5 years ago?
I don't know what was there 5 years ago. But right now, at least there's something along the fence.
So just to back up a second, that photo that we were just looking at says October 2018.
That's similar to an existing condition, yes. This is an aerial from, and again, from my perspective, it's just clarifying what they're proposing to save and remain, what they're proposing to install, because they're asking for a waiver from the landscape provisions, and there's minimal landscaping being proposed. Schneider Electric is an existing office complex and manufacturing complex with a parking lot. Its viability long-term as that use is questionable. So you are introducing a new driveway and new buildings and a new manufacturing use, in essence, next to an office complex. So it's a question from the planning board of how do they want to treat it, and are you comfortable understanding what they're proposing to do?
So are you suggesting that we ask them to beef up the landscaping along that driveway so as to create a permanent buffer to the Schneider parking lot? Because up north of it, where you're talking about turning radius, that's for, Schneider Electric ends at that dotted line where the chain link fence takes that little turn. Behind that is just forest, and it's owned by the Kingston Water District. I don't know that they should necessarily have to put in trees abutting the forest in the back by Kingston Water. So if there was a choice, then I suppose I would rather see the trees or shrubs moved down along that driveway. But having the trees installed up to the north of Building 2, right next to the forest, abutting the Water District land, I don't know if that's in the regulations, but that seems kind of a little, maybe a little silly.
If I understand your point, they're proposing to plant 3 trees in front of an area that's relatively forested, and
And
then
should
where
stay
it
forested.
isn't forested, they're not proposing to plant any trees.
Yeah. But putting the trees here by the forest, Kingston Water's not going to build a condo back there, so that doesn't, I think, need the buffering.
We can push those up front. I mean, no one's really going to see that besides interior.
I mean,
The other plantings, I don't know if you were referring to them, but the ones that are along the wetland buffer in the back, that was a DEM requirement to identify the buffer and maintain that area. So that was one of their conditions.
I wasn't referring to those, but
Okay.
I was referring to the trees that are going in next to the forest, north of Building 2.
We can move those to the front.
But if you had to move those and we weren't requiring those trees, does that give you a little more flexibility with your pavement there for your turning radius?
Yeah, I mean, we can run those trucks, and I think what's gonna end up happening, if we move those trees, we probably have to expand that out a little bit with either crushed stone or reinforced turf or something in that area, but we can run that. I don't think, it's not an issue. There's plenty of room there to make it work.
I'm not proposing more pavement. You've got lots of pavement.
No, it might be like crushed stone or something to that effect, just in case they have to drive over it.
I think those would be reasonable options if you can come back to us with that. Shouldn't really be a big deal. And, you know, Schneider Electric does have a flooding issue, so any vegetation on your parcel is just going to be beneficial to you.
Okay. Sounds good.
Sorry, can I just ask one more question? To the left of Building 3, to the west of Building 3, I think you just have lawn back there. Are you taking all those trees down between Building 3 and the Trays and Thatcher? I can't read it without my glasses. To the left of Building 3, are you clear-cutting that space?
It's, that area, the grading, it's gonna depend on the final building construction, but we do show grades over there, because it is kinda, that area is kind of a depression where that building's going. So we don't wanna put the building there and not have, like any fill or anything.
So that may be
Just
clear-cut to the property?
Clarity, Susan, and again, it's hard to see at this scale, but to Mr. Russo's point, the westerly edge of the building, just behind it, there are 2 grading contours. First, just by the icon, and the second by the pointer. So there are 2 changes in elevation which will jeopardize their ability to save any vegetation in that area.
It is fill, though it's not a cut, so if there is a chance we can save it, with a fill, you definitely have a better chance of trying to preserve a tree than if you have to cut it all out. So that's something we can look at with the final design, but we do have to fill some of that area back there.
Any other thoughts? Last chance for anyone for the public hearing? Would someone like to close the public hearing?
Second.
Second from Paul. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 And you'll come back with us, you'll come back to us with some alternate scenarios in terms of the turning and the...
Yep. So turning radius, and then I'll have the landscape architect look at the tree relocation. Thank you.
Sounds good, thank you.
Just, Madam Chair, for before, Mr. Russo? Guys,
Continue to the
Yeah, just so we're clear, you,
Second? Second from?
if your intent is to have them to come back with revised plans, you shouldn't close the public hearing. So no one has left the room.
Well, somebody did.
Would someone like to reopen the public hearing?
Motion to reopen the public hearing?
I'll second that.
Motion from Paul, second from Susan. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. And then motion to continue until January 24th.
Motion to continue till January 24th?
Motion from Paul, second.
Second.
Second from Liz. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and my apologies for not catching that quicker.
The last item is under reports and special items, internally illuminated signs, discussion on the provisions of the zoning ordinance allowing internally illuminated signs, Article 8 signs, and we have a printout from staff. It does seem kind of like a work session item to me. We redid the lighting ordinance, I don't know how many years ago, and because of the proliferation of LED signs, which weren't in the ordinance at the time, and then we allowed sandwich boards, and it was kind of a lengthy process. So, and this does fall within design standards. I do know that Susan asked for this discussion. I wonder if you could give us a 30-second summary of why you...
Just, Madam Chair, before Susan,
Sensitive?
the primary intent for this to be on the agenda is for Susan to bring up the subject matter with the intention that you would vote to put it on your work session in January.
So we'll, and then you'll get more than your 30 seconds.
Well, I can keep it brief. I'm insulted. So I'm a little concerned that we've had some legislative issues change here in town, and we've got some new kind of businesses coming into town. And we might want to just make sure that our signage is what we want it to be before anything changes in town.
Good, so we've agreed to
I
put
kept
it
it
on
brief.
our
That was
work
very
session.
brief.
Very brief, well done. So we will put this on our next work session. Thank you, Susan. And it is an issue.
No, I was
It is.
thinking, hot shop, right? You could have the flashing, alternating leaves in different
And it will
colors.
give everyone
And
time.
maybe a smoking pipe puffing.
Big doobie.
Yeah, big doobie puffing smoke rings, yeah, absolutely.
Member for TRC?
Madam Chair, I did receive correspondence from Liz saying she would like to volunteer for the January meeting.
You are the duty member. That's how it works.
Liz, would you prefer,
We'll fight you for it.
There'll be others at the meeting, no worries.
Liz, would you prefer 9 a.m. or 1 p.m.? Okay, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Before we do that, I just want to quickly say that, given the interest at the local and state level on affordable housing and mixed-use development and potential for mandates coming from the state, I believe it will be well worth our while to also add to the next work session a discussion about Old Tower Hill Road and zoning amendments that might be made to create not only more affordable housing, but true mixed use. We've talked about this in general terms. Will Green's URI class did a wonderful project related to this several years ago. It would be nice if I could get him to come to one of our meetings, but I think we should start really talking about this in a serious nature and planning for it. So if everyone agrees, I think it should be on our work session agenda.
I agree.
Super. Oh, and the work session would be the 10th.
Ooh, and do we need to talk about a special meeting?
Yes, and the town council last night directed the board, or asked the board if they would be willing to have a special meeting to talk about their concerns relative to retail marijuana location. It would help them, I think, considerably if we could do this early in the month. So is that something that either people can think about now or send out a doodle poll, but it would be nice if we could do that sooner than later.
We can send out a doodle
Well,
poll.
we have one less meeting this month, so. Yep. So is everybody amenable to that, given our schedule, and we will try our best? Okay, motion to adjourn? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
So Susan and I think that New Year's Eve, we could have a combined party retail marijuana discussion.
Yeah. I'll go to Attleboro and get some supplies.
There you go, we'll have
We'll have a little,
sampling.
we'll have a little session.
Yeah.
We'll have a session with our work session.